IB Nation, Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast presented by FanDuel. It is Friday, August 29th, which means week one, the first Saturday of week one, is one day away, but college football has already started. We had action last weekend. We had some action last night, which I know we'll talk a little bit about here today, but that is Shaun Davis. I'm Brian Driscoll. We're here for the RTCF show, recruiting, team, college football related topics. And today we have a good one, Shaun. We're going to move the order around a little bit. Today's going to be more like a TCFR show with the order that we're going to do. We're going to talk some Notre Dame team topics. Today's Notre Dame team topic, we are going to talk about, Shaun brought this up last week, and I was like, dude, text that to me right now so we don't forget to talk about that in the next RTCF show. So we're talking about, like, what is the talent level, the NFL talent level on Notre Dame's roster? And why does it matter? And and what does it say about where the program is? That'll be our topic number one. It's going to be very, very interesting. On a day where Xavier Watts, former Notre Dame All-American in safety, was announced by Rasheem Morris that he is going to be the starting safety in his first game in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons. So tremendous honor for Xavier. Not surprising for anyone that's watched Xavier the last 2 years that he went in there and made a great impression, but it's still great to see him earn that honor. We saw a couple of undrafted free agents from Notre Dame's team last year make NFL teams, Bo Collins, Howard Cross. So came out today. We'll dive into all the NFL roster talk and why it matters. Then we're going to talk about college football. We're just going to dive into week one. Shaun and I were like, there's not like one specific topic, but Shaun was just like, dude, I want to talk about all the things that I'm excited to watch this weekend. And so we'll do that. And then I'm going to have Shaun give his predictions on a couple of the games that we made predictions for yesterday. And we'll have some fun. And it's going to be more than just quarterback talk this weekend, Shaun, although for me, that's a big part of my interest this weekend. And then the last topic, we're going to talk a little bit about 2027 recruiting and just some overview of things, where they are, who we like, who we want to see them really go after, and just some guys, obviously some players that started their seasons. I know Quentin Burrell starts his season, I believe, tonight, Shaun. So he's obviously a top target. Julius Jones Jr. started his season last week. Rob Larson started his season last week. So a lot going on, and I'm very excited to dive into that. But first, Shaun, let's dive into this Notre Dame team topic. And it's not necessarily specific to this weekend's game, but more so just diving into just this Notre Dame team. And to begin, when you look at this team, we talk about, we think it's a talented team, and that word could mean a lot of different things. And what defines talent? What do you look at and say, okay, this is a talented football team? Okay, there's no doubt that Notre Dame is a talented football team. No one would deny that. People that think Notre Dame is a borderline top 10 team think that they have talent. That's why they have them in the top, borderline top 10. But the question is it a talented enough football team to say they can go out there and make a run at the national championship and win it? And there was a fascinating stat that came out yesterday, and it really is interesting because this came up after Shaun had the conversation last week about bringing up about because what was the whole point of starting the show, Shaun? It was wanting to give people an insight and conversations you and I just have anyway, and just letting people see that. And he brought up about the NFL talent thing, and I think it was something that came up on your guys' Lucky Lefty show, and then you wanted to dive into it even further with me. And then yesterday, or this past week, I should say, it comes out, all the NFL rosters are released, and they list, how many guys are in the NFL per team and the combined earnings and all those type of things. And right now, Notre Dame is tied for 6th with Texas for the most players, active NFL players. The 5 teams ahead of them are Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, and Michigan. Michigan has 3 more. LSU has 4 more. Then, of course, you have 16 more for Ohio State, 18 more for Georgia, and then 20 more for Alabama. If those names sound familiar, it should, because from 2019 to 2024, every single team that has won a national championship ranks ahead of Notre Dame and Texas on that list. Who are the teams that people say are knocking on the door to be the next new champion? It's Notre Dame, Texas, Oregon. Who are the next 3 teams outside of that top 5? Notre Dame and Texas tied, and people say Penn State too. That's a different conversation for a different day. Notre Dame and Texas tied with 43. Penn State's at 41. Oregon's at 37. It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all. And so we look at it and say, okay, is Notre Dame's current roster, Shaun, look like that? Or is Notre Dame's current roster, when we look back in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, going to result in Notre Dame shooting up this list? I think the answer to that question, the real answer, not what you and I are going to give our opinion, but the answer is going to determine whether or not over the next few years, Notre Dame is a team that can not only go out and play in, but win a national championship.
I think this speaks to the depth of NFL talent on a particular roster, but it also speaks to the number of elite players on your team that transition into the NFL. So when you talk about the 6 teams and for the 6 teams in front of Notre Dame, you're really talking about those teams having more elite players. That's where the difference comes in for me. Definitely, I'm interested in the first. Who's number 1? What's the number of players that they have? Because I haven't seen. I know you sent
Alabama was 63.
63. So that's a difference of what?
20.
19, 20.
Georgia's next at 61. That's 19 more. And then Ohio State's next with 59. That is obviously 16 more. And then it should be noted, Shaun, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, there's a drop-off between Ohio State and the next team. So Ohio State's at 59, then LSU's at 47, Michigan's at 46, and Notre Dame's at 43. So there's a drop-off between sort of the big 3, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and then the next group, which includes Michigan, who's won 1, LSU, who's won 1, and then Notre Dame and Texas, who have yet to win one.
Let's talk about that gap, and let's have a realistic and honest conversation about that gap. Can Notre Dame get into that 60 range with Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, who have been pretty much producing at this level for, say, over a decade? That's going to take some work. That's going to take probably 4 to 5 consistent classes in the top 5 for Notre Dame to start knocking on that door. Now, in order for Notre Dame to take that next step, you're probably talking about maybe back-to-back top 5 classes. They seem to be sitting on a top 5 class right now. Maybe they move into that range in the 27 class. We'll get to that with the wide receivers. But that's the difference. And going to your point, if Notre Dame is going to make that difference, then some of the kids that they have in the 24 and 25 class have to become those first, second-round players, especially the way they produce for Notre Dame and as they transition into the NFL. We're going to talk about it. Do those guys exist on the current roster? That's possible, but I think that's the difference we're really talking about. And so when people say you really don't need elite talent, I understand it's not all about rankings and stars. It's about really talent evaluation, finding right guys, and development. We understand that. But the no-brainers per se, the guys that everybody in the world can look at and say, that kid is going to be good. Notre Dame has to, and it seems like they have started to get in on some of those kids nationally and to get them on campus. One of the things Marcus Freeman said on the pivot that I found very interesting is like, winning attracts the younger kids because they don't know about the Notre Dame of the 90s and the 2000s. They don't know about that Notre Dame. Now, if we win, they want to come visit and get on campus. And once they get on campus, it's our job to make them see why they are a Notre Dame kid or why they belong here. So that right there just shows you the mindset. Winning, getting them on campus, and then convincing them that Notre Dame is the place to be. I think they did an incredible job in this 26 class, collaborating with everyone and getting all of those big time targets on campus at the same time to create a picture for all of them to see that we can win together at Notre Dame. So I think that's something moving forward that bodes well, that, as you say, Notre Dame can close the gap and begin to close that gap on teams like Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State, who most geographically, Alabama and Georgia have an advantage. Geographically, when it comes to certain positions,
Ohio State does as well, because that's the one
Ohio,
northern state that still produces a lot of NFL talent.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing, Shaun, when you point to it, when you talk about it, is we talk about the big three, and there's the recruiting aspect, and we've always said you need talented players. And there's this notion, well, that means get 5 stars. Well, not necessarily. It means get good players. And they're going to come in all shape and sizes. And this has always been my point. Some of them will be 5 stars. Some of them will be high 4 stars. Some of them will be 3 stars. You don't go after 5-star players just because they're 5-star players. You go after 5-star players because you evaluate their talent. You think that they have that kind of ability. And not every 5-star player gets recruited to be a 5-star player because teams don't always think that that guy's a 5-star player just because Rivals does. And that's what can skew these. Well, this team had X number of 5 stars. I kind of laugh about that because I remember it was back in 2015 watching, or 14 watching, or 15 watching that Ohio State team against Notre Dame. All 5-star players. And I'm like, yeah. But like when you look at Ohio State's linebacking core, it was a perfect example. You had a 5-star middle linebacker in Curtis Grant. You had a 4-star top 150 caliber linebacker in Josh Perry. And then you had a 3-star player in Darren Lee. Well, who was the first-round draft pick of that group? It was the 3-star, Darren Lee. It wasn't Curtis Grant. I don't even know that Curtis Grant got drafted. The 5-star got drafted. And then Josh Perry was a third-round pick. So just because it says, well, you got 5 stars, it doesn't mean that those 5 stars are your stars. But it does mean go out and get the best talent that you can get, and sometimes they're going to look like that. And I do think that the floors tend to be a lot higher for those guys. That's the difference. I think the thing that I have an issue with is the ceilings are similar between a Leonard Moore and a 5-star guy, just hypothetically speaking. The difference is the floors for a lot of these kids. And that, like, the floor for a Rodney Dunham is going to be higher than maybe a sleeper kid that's got some boomer bust potential. That's what I think the difference is. And you need both of those. And especially at certain positions. I think there's certain positions that the recruiting services nail because it's not hard to look at certain play. You don't have to know much about football to watch Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, but yeah, it's a 5-star. But where they also miss a lot. They miss a quarterback. They miss on the offensive line. They missed a lot in defensive tackle at times. So it's about finding the players that you evaluate, but getting that elite talent in whatever it looks like, whether it's a 5-star, 3-star, whatever. What's interesting is a lot of Notre Dame's high-level players that people project as having first-round talent were not 5 stars coming out of high school. Some of them were 3 stars. Some of them are like Jeremiah Love, where no, he wasn't a 5-star. He wasn't that far away. He was a consensus top 100 recruit. And to me, if you're a consensus top 100 recruit, there's not a difference between you at 65 and somebody at 25. I mean, that's the best of the best. And if Notre Dame's going to close that gap, and it takes time to close that gap, that didn't happen just over a couple-year period. If Notre Dame's going to win over the next couple of years, it's because that talent has already started to be put on this campus. It's already here. And that gets to the conversation about today's show, where we really want to take it to that next level, is because you can't win it all without talent. That's especially true now in a 3 to 4, where you got to win 3 to 4 games to win a championship. I say 3 to 4 because obviously, if you get a first round bye, you only got to win 3. And for some teams, you've got to win 5 postseason games to win a championship. If you win your conference and then you don't get a bye, there's a chance that you're going to have to play the conference championship game and then the 4 playoff games. Some teams, well, everybody except Notre Dame. Actually, the only team that doesn't have to play, I mean, it's going to be difficult for anyone other than Notre Dame to only have to play 3 postseason games. The odds of a team not playing in their conference championship but still getting a bye, it's pretty slim. It's more possible now than it used to be because of the imbalance of the leagues with 16 to 18 teams in them. But the point is, it's unlikely. It'll be rare. But the point is, you've got to win 3-4 games. You can't luck your way into 3 wins. You can luck your way into a couple, Penn State. And when I mean luck, I don't mean they got lucky in those games. I mean, you got a lucky draw. You got a good draw. So I think that's probably a better way of saying it than luck. You got a good draw. It could be, 2017, 2018. You're like, man, you're lucky that number 5 ranked team didn't get in. I say this about Alabama's 2015 national title team. Y'all got real lucky that Ohio State got beat by Michigan State at the end of the year. Because Nick Saban's got one less national title if that 15 Ohio State team's in the playoffs. We agree on that? I mean, now that Ohio State team's in the playoff, which we just saw last year. 3 years ago, Ohio State's sitting at home while they're watching, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, and either Notre Dame or Penn State. I still say they would have leaped Notre Dame over Penn State in the old system, in a 4-team system. I don't think they would have just left it the way that it was. But either way, one thing we do know, Ohio State's sitting at home. That's what I mean by you could kind of get lucky and catch some breaks back in the day, because a team that had one bad day that was better than everybody else, 18 Ohio State is another example of that. I think 16 Oklahoma, I think that's the year they didn't make it in. That team was pretty dangerous by the end of the year. I think it was 16 Oklahoma. There's teams that we've seen like that. 16 USC. End of the year, nobody wanted to play that football team. Now you'd have to play them in a playoff. So that's what I mean by, catch some breaks. But then also, like, you can be at Penn State and get an easy couple round slate of Boise and SMU, but eventually you got to play Notre Dame. And if they were somehow able to beat Notre Dame, they would have had to figure out a way to beat Ohio State or Texas, right? So the point is, you have to earn it. And if Penn State would have beat Notre Dame and beat Ohio State, they would have earned it, and there'd be respect for what they did. But you have to have the talent now. You don't just draw your way to a championship. You've got to have that talent. So the question is, does Notre Dame still have the talent that reflects a team that is tied for 6th, but still far away from Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia? Or is the current team at Notre Dame, like I think people would argue the current Texas team is, a significantly different type of roster than the one that produced 43 NFL players and looks more like the rosters that produced 59 to 63 NFL players? I think most evaluators would tell you that's what they think of Texas. What I don't know that everybody agrees on is Notre Dame, Shaun, and that's where this conversation came from.
And a lot of different things. Texas is a hotbed, right? Geographically, Texas A&M, they have an advantage, right? But if you don't have the right staff, the right head coach, the right plan, some of those guys can go underdeveloped. Some of those guys won't reach their full potential. Some of those guys end up transferring to other schools to find opportunities. And so before they got Elko, of course, and Sark, you start to see those programs stalling a little bit when it came to development and winning on the field. And then you have the domino effect of them not turning out the elite top guys. Of course, because geographically, they're always going to get the best player in their state or some of the top 10 players in their state. From a depth standpoint, like you talked about, which Notre Dame, which is interesting when you look at Notre Dame's week 1 opponent. It really is a view into where the Notre Dame roster was 2 years ago when you look at the Miami roster, which is in the same, I think they're in the 4th year. Cristobal's in the 4th year, just like Marcus Freeman, but they're in two totally different places from a roster building standpoint. Why that way? It's a lot of things you can talk about why. However, they are still trying to supplement via the transfer portal. Notre Dame is never going to supplement at the level of those type of schools via the transfer portal, but there was a need for transfer portal guys to come in and make a significant impact for Notre Dame, along with true freshmen 2 years ago. Now the freshman class, you look at Ethan Long, Jadon Blair, it's like, hey guys, go learn the culture, play special teams, earn your way, and we'll let you develop and see you next season. I mean, that is when you have a great roster. When you don't, you have to be great and exceptional as a freshman to step into a championship program and get on the field consistently. And that is what we've seen Notre Dame get to in the last 2 years from a roster standpoint. And when you have that type of depth on the roster, then you're promoting this is how the NFL success is going to come. And so I think we're going to see that when we really start to break down what Notre Dame has on this roster. That's why I love this matchup, because it really is not to say that decides who wins the game on Sunday, but it really is a picture of where both programs are fourth year for both head coaches, but it's just development and it's a process. And Miami going through their process, and Notre Dame is going through their process. And it just seems like, from a roster and depth standpoint and development and recruiting, Notre Dame is a little bit further ahead. So getting back to your point, I think you want to jump into the roster right now and just.
Well, I want to make a point to what you just said, is because
go ahead.
Because when you have, let's just throw out a hypothetical number. Let's say Notre Dame or a team has 15 NFL players and another team has 5. The team with 5 can beat the team with 15, but the margin for error for the team with 15 is much smaller. The team with 15 doesn't have to play A+ game to beat the team with 5. And those 5 are like a 3rd-round pick, a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, and a couple 7ths, right? Maybe a 7th and an undrafted free agent, where the team with 15 has 3 1s, 2 2s, and then you kind of go down that way. Can the team with 5 beat the team with 15? Of course. I'd say 5 is probably about the number of NFL players Purdue had on their 2017 team or 2018 team to beat Ohio State. But on that night, the Ohio State roster with all that talent did not play well. And there was enough NFL talent with like Rondell Moore and David Bell and guys like that at Purdue. I think Aiden O'Connell the quarterback for that team for Purdue in 2018?
I think he was.
All right, a guy that started NFL football games. Right now, is he a Pro Bowler? Is he no? But he's a guy that obviously has some ability, and so he was not the. Who was the quarter? David Bluff was the quarterback on that team. Who also, again, played in the NFL, right? So was he a high draft pick? No. Was he a starting quarterback? He started a couple games. I don't think he played very well, but he had enough talent with Rondell Moore that with Ohio State playing down, they played out of their minds. Boom, upset happens. 9 times out of 10, though, Ohio State's winning that football game, and that's the point. And the more NFL talent you have, which means elite NFL talent, the greater your odds of being mistake proof, meaning your mistakes don't get you beat as often as they do when you have less overall talent. And that's where Marcus Freeman is trying to build to. Notre Dame's always had good NFL talent. And you look at the list that we provided, they've always been in this range of like low 40s to mid 30s is always kind of where Notre Dame has been the last decade as far as NFL players. What we're seeing now is the numbers creeping up, but also the impact talent. You just saw Kyle Hamilton sign to the highest paid safety in the NFL. There's been a time in recent years when Notre Dame had the highest paid. I think Ronnie Stanley for a minute was one of the highest paid left tackles. Zach Martin was at one time the highest paid guard. We're seeing more of this. We're seeing guys that are getting bigger contracts because they're higher level players and more valued players. And that's also part of it on top of just the raw numbers. Because if we both have 43 NFL players on, in the last 3 years, but you've got 9 first-round picks, 12 second and third-round picks, and we've only got 5 of those type of players, our margin for error is a lot smaller. We can beat you, but it's going to be tougher. We have to play closer to our A game to win every weekend, and that's the point. And so that's kind of where a lot of this comes from, Shaun, is Notre Dame's always put guys in the NFL. But they haven't put the elite guys in the NFL. And of those 43, I think like 4 kickers. You know what I mean? Like including one guy who didn't even play football at Notre Dame. I mean, if we're being honest about the numbers, we have to have that conversation. And so like the gap between Notre Dame's 43 and Georgia's 61 is not special teamers. That's what needs to be fixed. So then the question gets to, and here's where we can get to this, Shaun, is okay, but what will the story be for the current roster? And that's where this is, and I think that's what last year's playoff showed to me. That's why Notre Dame was able to do what they did last year with all the injuries, because you were losing guys and putting guys with future NFL talent on the field to replace them. That wasn't always the case for Notre Dame. And I think that says a lot about this team. When you watched Georgia and Notre Dame play, you said they've got high-level NFL players. Notre Dame has high-level NFL players. When you saw Notre Dame play Penn State, you felt the same way. When you watched Ohio State, Notre Dame play, you said that team's got more NFL players than Notre Dame does at some very important spots. Not necessarily a wide margin total, but maybe a few first-round talents. Maybe a few more wide receiver talents where Notre Dame didn't have any of that playing last year. So I think that's where the conversation is for me, Shaun, when we look at this team, is what is the NFL talent on this team like, and where is it, and what level of NFL talent are we looking at when we evaluate this Notre Dame football team?
When you talk about closing the gap, I'm going to give you one simple narrative or title for Notre Dame moving forward. Outside the hashes. That's where the difference is going to come. We've seen the development at the defensive back situation, the cornerback. Can the wide receivers get there? And can the quarterback get there? Can they get outside the hash NFL talent in recruiting and developing and going on to the NFL? And then can that quarterback position take the next step? Because honestly, when you start talking about Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Georgia, that's where the difference really is when it comes to Notre Dame. Notre Dame has not produced at those three positions consistently at a high level and high level draft picks. And if they can do that and change that narrative moving forward, starting this year with CJ Carr, even if it's Will Pauling, Malachi Fields, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Elijah Burris, some of the youngsters that have, promise moving forward. And then the recruiting class, the five-man haul and the 26 class, if they can come in and 2 or 3 of those guys can develop into first and second round picks, that's when you start to close the gap, because that's really the difference. Notre Dame in the trenches, defensive line is another one as well, particularly on the interior with those top programs that you have to catch up. But Notre Dame produces running backs. They produce offensive linemen. They produce safeties. They produce linebackers. Like inside the hashes, Notre Dame is pretty good and almost equal inside the hashes is outside the hashes. And at the quarterback, where Notre Dame really has to take a step forward when it comes to recruiting, development, and then getting those guys to be elite players and going on to the NFL in the first or second round.
I would argue that Notre Dame has a pretty good number of NFL players at defensive tackle on this team. The question is, in the comparison to teams that you're talking about, Shaun, is I think a lot of Notre Dame's NFL talent at defensive tackle are kind of where the recent defensive tackles have been drafted. 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round type of guys. If Jason Onye goes in as a monster year, I don't see Jason Onye becoming a first or second round NFL draft pick. I would love to be wrong, but I don't think he's that level of NFL player. That's where that particular position is different. You talk about it, offensive line. I mean, tight end's been a position where they've produced. I mean, gosh, I think it's going back to Jabari Holloway. That's what started the current run of guys who were proven starters in the NFL the season-long starters for Notre Dame have been drafted when their careers are over. It goes back to the 90s. But the problem was, Shaun, for a long time, those are the only 3 positions that Notre Dame was really putting anyone into the NFL at. A big chunk of their depth chart was put out by linemen, offensive linemen, tight ends, and safeties. And you didn't see a whole lot of linebackers. You didn't see a whole lot of running backs until recently. You're starting to see more of that recently, beginning really with Kyron, especially. You see Notre Dame starting to, they'd have a receiver here, a receiver there, but they weren't putting in the volume. That's still an area that they've got to continue to improve. But I think when I look at this team, Shaun, the difference is going to be, can they put more quarterbacks into the NFL? Notre Dame's last drafted quarterback was Deshaun Kaiser, who was in 17. Before that, I believe it was, it was Ian Book. That would have been in 2021. Before that, it was Deshaun Kaiser in 2008. He was 17 draft. Then before that, it would be what? Brady Quinn. The last 2 Notre Dame players that were drafted were out of the league within 3 years. Because Ian Book, 4 years. Ian Book was on an NFL roster in 21, 22, 23, and 24. Right now, he's living in South Bend. And Deshaun Kaiser lasted half that time. He was out in 2 years. which I think says a lot about the mindsets of those two players. If you give Ian Book DeShone Kizer's talent, he's starting in the NFL right now. Like, let Ian Book be 6'4", 240, and with that arm. So anyway, it's a different conversation for a different day. How many receivers for Notre Dame are in the NFL right now? It's a very small number. How many corners in the NFL from Notre Dame right now? It's a very small number. They have several defensive ends in the NFL, but none of them are impact guys, unless I'm forgetting someone. Because Stephon Tuitt and Justin Tucker are no longer in the league. Khalid, I think, is on an NFL roster. I think Dalen Hayes is in the league. Adi's in the league. Julian Aguar is in the league. Isaiah Foskey's in the league. There's ends in the league. But how many of them were, high draft picks, meaning first, second round? I think Julian was the highest at third round. No, Foskey went second round. He hasn't really done anything for the Saints. How many of them are impact players? There's more Ohio State defensive ends in one family that are impact players in the NFL than what Notre Dame has produced in the last 10 years. So there are still positions where, looking backwards, Notre Dame isn't there yet, Shaun. But my question to you is this. Let's dive into this. And we'll go whatever order you want to go into position-wise. But it's about, we know that Notre Dame has NFL talent on the offensive line. You and I agree on that. Let's go everywhere else. Where do you want to start? And then let's just kind of go through it and say, okay, A, what's the NFL talent look like? And B, do they have high-level NFL talent at this position? I think that'll be an interesting conversation. Where do you want to start?
Let's go ahead and start at the positions where they've struggled. Let's start at quarterback, wide receiver. Let's start offensively at quarterback and the skill positions. Let's just start there. Kyron has turned into a heck of an NFL running back. But I don't think neither one of us thought he would do what he's doing in the NFL. However, this is why it's so important, because him going to Sean McVay's offense that uses the running back, getting them in space, and utilizes his ability to catch out the backfield, which he did very well in Notre Dame. That's just a guy really going to the right situation. And as long as he's healthy, he's going to produce. But I don't know if I would have considered him a high-level running back draft. He has produced at that level, but I wouldn't have considered him that coming out of Notre Dame. Now, the running back room now, I think you have two top 60 running backs in the running back room right now. Then you talk about the guys behind them. This is the funny thing. I think the true freshman is one of the most underrated, gifted talents in the entire room. And we're just talking about physical ability. He might shock everybody 2 years from now and end up being a guy that goes first round, late first round, second round, because running backs don't have that value unless you're like the Ashton Genty type that just comes out and has one of those incredible seasons. So running back room has been there. Have they had that Jeremiah Love elite guy? No. But I think we're starting to see those guys show up. Even the two guys they got in the 26 class in recruiting, those are two guys that have an opportunity to be those type of elite backs and elite players going on to the NFL. What do you think about the running back room?
I think this is the most NFL talent Notre Dame has had depth-wise and impact-wise. And you look back at past Notre Dame teams, there was NFL players on past NFL teams. Josh Adams didn't get drafted, but I think that you'll agree with me, Shaun, that if Josh doesn't have the foot injury that he had going into the draft, he probably gets drafted at the end of the draft. He's probably a 5th to 7th round draft pick. That's I think that's probably accurate. He couldn't run at the combine. There's a lot of things Josh couldn't do. I think he gets drafted. I don't think Josh is a 2nd or 3rd round draft. You don't go from 2nd round draft pick to undrafted because of a foot injury. I don't think. You go from a 5th round draft pick to undrafted, or a 4th round pick. You also had Dexter Williams, who was a 6th round draft pick on that team. Tony Jones Jr. spent some time in an NFL roster. Actually, he's carried the ball, played in the NFL games. He was on that team. So you had NFL players in that team. You look at, I think I think if Logan Diggs hadn't had the multiple knee injuries he's had, he's an NFL player. Audric Estime is an NFL player. But again, Audric's a 5th-round draft pick who just got cut in his second year by the Broncos. So they've had NFL players, Shaun, but what they haven't had in a long time, probably since Julius Jones Jr. back in the late 90s, early 2000s, is a high-level, top-of-the-NFL draft player. Would you agree with that? Like, they've had good players, but no, like, they've had Torian Folstons. They've had,
absolutely.
I mean, CJ Prosise was a 3rd-round draft pick at running back, but that was more of betting on the athleticism as opposed to being a proven running back. He only played it for 1 year, and I think that's what hurt CJ in the NFL was just that he only played running back for a year. There's a lot of just little things.
Tell you.
Yeah,
he'll tell you. He wishes.
John, you've talked about this, right?
He wishes he would have stayed a wide receiver from an NFL standpoint because he did not have the physical. He didn't have a year to really turn his body into a running back body. He had a wide receiver body trying to play running back in the NFL. And the NFL running back position is far. If you think running backs, Jawan Sider talks about it, is one of the only positions that makes contact with somebody every single play physically. And when you go to the NFL, it's even tougher because either they're running the rock or they're blocking. They're running the rock or blocking. And so they're taking on guys that are bigger than them doing both the majority of the time. And so he said when he got to the NFL, it was like, yo, I'm trying to pick up this 290-pound defensive end, and I'm solo on him in a blocking scheme. And he's like, yo, I wish I had stayed at wide receiver, just been out in space using my gifts and talents.
And just the overall feel for the position that guys get playing it for 15 years. I mean, if you really think about a lot of these guys, they get drafted in the NFL, they start playing running back when they were 5-6 years old in Pop Warner. And CJ picked it up the spring before his senior year. So, I mean, that's part of it. But even then, he was a 3rd-round draft pick. Theo Riddick was a 6th-round draft pick. Dex was a 6th-round draft pick. They haven't had that high-level NFL talent at running back since going back to Julius Jones, who was a 2nd-round draft pick. But I think it's not just Jeremiah Love. That's what makes this different. I think Jadarian Price is a day 2 NFL draft type of talent, if not for injuries and the fact that he's backing up Jeremiah Love. I mean, I look at what the fact is as a true freshman, he had beaten out Audric Estime and Logan Diggs, who were older than him, a year older than him, in the spring. I was told this by a Notre Dame coach, by actually the Notre Dame offensive coordinator, that if he had not got hurt, Jadarian Price was going to start, not on the way to start. He was going to start for them in 2022. And then he gets hurt and obviously has that whole process to set him back. But I think there's at least one other NFL player on the running back room right now. And whether it's Aeneas Williams or Nolan James, pick one. I don't know that, like, not everybody with NFL talent pans out. But I see a world. I mean, like Aeneas Williams' similarities as an athlete and a player to Kyren Williams are incredibly, incredibly hard to ignore. Body type wise, running style wise, versatility wise, both from Missouri, both prolific pass catchers in high school. Except I'd argue Aeneas is a little bit more athletic than Kyren was at the same age. Now, does he have those other intangibles that Kyren had? We'll find out. But I think he has NFL talent, and I absolutely think Nolan James Jr. has NFL talent. I'm going to hold off on talking about Kedron Young right now because we got to see how he recovers from the knee injury. But before that, he would have been in this conversation as well. So of the current roster, because I don't count Aeneas part of the current roster. Kedron is part of the current roster because he's not going to play this year. I think there's 4 guys with the talent and the potential to be NFL players. It's the most I can remember Notre Dame having since, like I said, the 90s.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So quarterback, this is going to be an interesting conversation. Are we going strictly from just physical ability and how we think these kids can develop? When we look at the talent in the room, we both agree that the talent in the room is considerably better than it was 2 years ago. That's safe to say. CJ Carr is without question an NFL talent quarterback.
Well, your starting quarterback from 3 years ago is now your third string quarterback. I just think that's literally the end of the sentiment right there.
There you go.
Your savior quarterback 3 years ago is right now third string. And when you watch him in practice, he's improved a lot. And Tim O'Malley and I were sitting in practice, one of the last ones we had. And we're watching Tyler and Kenny and Blake Hebert and CJ Carr throw. And we're talking about how much Tyler's improved. His ball placement's really good. He's throwing with good timing. We're talking about how much he's improved, but we're like, the arm, just the talent between him and then what you see from even Blake Hebert, much less Kenny Minchie and CJ Carr. It's like, dude, it's not even close. Just like the zip, the power, the length that it goes to. It's like, this is a good version of Tyler Buchner. Like, this is kind of close to what he'd be throwing like had he never left Notre Dame. If not what he'd be throwing like. But you're like, it's just different as far as what it looks like. And then he's like 2 to 3 inches shorter than CJ Carr. And he's a good inch shorter than Kenny Minchie. And he looks little compared to Blake Hebert. I mean, Blake Hebert looks like he's a fourth-year NFL player right now, physically. He's 6'3", 225. I mean, he's a good-looking NFL player. So just the overall talent of the room, Shaun, is way better than what it's been since – I mean, I would even argue in the time of Deshaun, Ev, and Malik, because from an NFL standpoint, I don't know that Malik and Everett were ever like prototypical NFL talent. They were more really talented college players. Deshaun's the one that had like the NFL tools, which is what I think caused Brian Kelly to unnecessarily fall in love with him. But this is just different. But at the end of the day, the talent you have at quarterback is really only about who's your starter. And this is the first kid that I've looked at and said, this guy's got first round NFL talent. Really, like, and I mean that physically and mentally and character wise and leadership wise, really since 2009. I still say if Jimmy Clausen would have played on better teams and not had that bad foot injury, he's a first round draft pick. He's a second round draft pick as it was. But this is the most physically gifted quarterback they've had in over a decade. Now, will he be a great quarterback? We don't know. But physical gifts of what we do know, that's where I'm at. I think you finally have a kid. Here's what it is for me, Shaun. And I know exactly. I wait to see your facial expression when I say this. We've talked about how the last 2 times Notre Dame made the Final Four before the playoff expanded, we would look at it and say, one of these things doesn't look like the others. And it was a quarterback room of 2018, you're going to the playoffs, and it's Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, and Kyler Murray. 3 top 5 NFL draft picks, and then Ian Book. It was a 4th-round NFL draft pick. Nothing to sneeze at. 30-plus wins in his career. This is not an insult of Ian Book. Ian Book would tell you, I would think, I'm not as good as Trevor Lawrence, Tua Tagovailoa, and Kyler Murray. 2 years later, it's Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields, and then Ian Book. One of these things does not look like the others. This past year was different because none of the teams, in my opinion, in the semifinals had high-level NFL quarterbacks on their roster. It was just 4 college gamers. But it's not going to be the case moving forward, which we'll kind of talk about in our next segment. This is the first time where you say, Notre Dame's not going to take a back seat to just God-given talent at quarterback to just about anybody. If CJ Carr pans out the way that we think he is. Not plays above his potential, is better than we hoped for, all those type of things. It's just the talent level is there for him to be that kind of player. I had a buddy text me yesterday. Says to me, Shaun, I think CJ Carr has top 5 NFL talent potential. And I just was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. I agree.
Yeah, and it is amazing because you talk about CJ Carr, but the most physical, the gifts, but the most important thing that I've heard, I didn't hear from Marcus Freeman. I didn't hear from Gino Guidugli. I didn't hear from Mike Denbrock. The one thing that really sealed the deal for me is when a captain of a team that wasn't on the roster last year, that transferred in during the spring, and in a short window proved within the culture that had already been set that he deserved to be a leader on this football team, comes to the microphone and says, that kid and the way he commands and leads as a redshirt freshman, when Will Pauling said that, for that to stand out for him, I was like, okay, that kind of gives you a picture into what could have been the separator in this quarterback one of the things that could have been a separator in this quarterback competition. When you have a veteran like that, who is a proven leader, speak to a young man that has never taken a snap and how much of a leader he is in the huddle, that lets you those are the intangibles, right? Because there are a lot of players that come in with physical gifts that never become what you think they were going to become. But the kid just seems to have something special about him that makes you think and believe even more. Yeah, he might be the one to change that narrative, right? Because either you have guys like that, you don't necessarily need a guy like that to win a national championship, but it doesn't hurt to not have a guy. We saw last year, you can win with Will Howard. You can get to the championship game with Riley Leonard. Heck, you can make it to the semifinals with Quinn Ewers. I mean, you don't need that guy. You don't need Joe Burrow, but it doesn't hurt when you have one of those guys going to the dance and going up against the better teams. So Notre Dame seems like you said, they're not going to be behind in anything when it comes to matching up with the top teams moving forward. And that's a great feeling, man, right? Because we went up against Saban in 2012 with a freshman, a true freshman. Gutsy, talented, played his tail off in that game. Probably was the best player on the field for Notre Dame in that game as a true freshman. But it just wasn't enough. So you have to be encouraged by what we said at running back, what we have at quarterback. And Bryan, I can't wait to see what I think is one of the deepest skill positions that Notre Dame is going to put out there when it comes to the wide receiver room since 2000. I think it was 2018 when they had 3 guys over 50 receptions. Or was that 17? It was Claypool.
Yeah, it was Fink. 18. It was, Fink, Claypool, and Boykin.
And Boykins, yeah.
They all had was it over 50 catches or over 500 yards? I think they all had over 500 yards.
No, I think they all had, it was either 50, all had either 40 or 50 receptions. I forget.
Yeah, it was over 40. Fink was at 49. Over 40?
Yeah,
Fink was close. Fink was at 49. Claypool was at 50. Boykin was at 59. Mack had 36 as well that year, but you had 3 guys over 500, 3 receivers over 500 yards. Just to put that into context, Shaun, of the effectiveness of that. Since that time, Notre Dame has never had a season with 3 players over 500 yards receiving. So I think that, and the closest they came to that was 2019 with Claypool, Fink, and who was the third receiver in 19? Cole Kmet. But it wasn't even a receiver; it was a tight end.
Yeah. So
to your point, look, there was a time when Notre Dame was pumping out legit NFL wide receivers consistently. Really from 2010 to 2019. I mean, you had Golden Tate, you had Michael Floyd, you had DeVaris Daniels would have been had he not gotten himself into trouble. But you had TJ Jones, you had Miles Boykin, you had Chase Claypool, you had guys that were really talented. And since then, they haven't really put anybody in the NFL. Who was the last Notre Dame receiver to get drafted? Was it Ben Skoranek in 2021? Kevin Austin didn't get drafted. Avery Davis didn't get drafted. Who am I missing? I don't believe they've had a guy get receiver get drafted.
The EQ get drafted?
But that would have been before Ben Skoranek. EQ's last year was 2016. He was before Claypool and Boykin. He was before them. So he was a 6th-round draft pick. But yeah, so nobody from last year's team got drafted yet. Now there's still guys left. Last 2 years teams, most of those guys are still in college. 2021, you had Kevin Austin didn't get drafted. Avery Davis didn't get drafted. Braden Lindsey didn't get drafted. 2020, Ben Skowronek in 2020. That's the last time Notre Dame's had a wide receiver get drafted. Like, you talk about a big difference when you're watching the team that they lost to in the national title game is going to have probably potentially three first-round draft picks on that roster, and two of them were playing like first-round draft picks at the time. I don't think Cardinal Tate's a first-round draft pick yet, based on how he's played, but I think he's got the tools to become one. But Emeka played like a first-rounder last year, and Jeremiah Smith played like a first-rounder last year. That's
So you think par for the course, you're good if you have one, but if you can have one,
if you want to win a championship,
and then one in the pipeline, I think that's.
I think you need at least three NFL players at wide receiver on your roster, and you need at least one of them to be a dude, meaning day one or day two pick. I really think you need that kind of player on your roster, and if you don't have that, you better have a first-round pick at tight end. Perfect example, Georgia. Like, I think Ladd McConkey was a late first-round pick, early second-round pick. Where did Ladd get picked? Do you remember? Let me think here. Let me look it up here real quick. Let me find Ladd McConkey real fast. I think Ladd was a late first-round pick, but give me a second to look that up here real quick. So, yeah, Ladd McConkey was an early second-round pick. He was picked 34th. So you had a day two pick, one day two pick, a bunch of other borderline NFL guys, and then a first-round draft pick at tight end. So I think you need at least one real high-level NFL player receiver. I think you need at least three on your roster. And what I mean by that is last year Ohio State had two first-round picks at receiver, and I would argue they had two other guys that are going to be NFL players, and Cardinal Tate and Brandon Inniss, that weren't quite there, like where they're playing like their max potential yet, but at least they have the talent. The way that Notre Dame plays the game, I think Ohio's a little bit different because they need more high level NFL talent because of the way they play. Notre Dame doesn't. I do think Notre Dame needs at least one high level NFL player. That means like day one, day two pick, and then at least two other just NFL players. So, for example, if you give me, Shaun, on this year's team, just using Notre Dame players as an example, give me Will Fuller, TJ Jones, and trying to think of another, because I don't want to take another high level guy. I want to take like a trying to think of another example that would work here, but let's say Theo Riddick. You give me a receiving core with Will Fuller, Theo Riddick, and TJ Jones. I'm looking at this receiver core saying, like, okay, with Jeremiah Love at running back, with Eli Raridan you got a pretty good team. And I didn't even ask for Golden Tate or Michael Floyd as my or to have Chase Claypool as my number two. And that's, I think, a thing that allowed Notre Dame to be on the same level to a degree with a Clemson in 2018, because no, they didn't have the quarterback to compete with those guys, but they had receivers that could. Like, they weren't quite on the same level as T. Higgins and Justin Ross, but they weren't that far off at that time. And that played a big role. And you had an NFL talent at tight end. He didn't always have an NFL attitude, but there's no question Alizé Mack had NFL talent. It's the only reason he got drafted, if we're being honest about it, is because of the God-given talent. It wasn't because of the work ethic and the attitude and the focus. It was the talent. And so that's, to me, what I think. Now the question is, Shaun, where is the current roster? Because that's one of the reasons that I think that people are missing this team. That this is there's two areas where I think national analysts don't realize the NFL talent that Notre Dame does have on the roster. That's wide receiver and defensive end. I don't think people realize the NFL talent they have on this roster. Some of it's younger, but when I look at Notre Dame's starting lineup, I think Malachi Fields is an NFL player. I think Jaden Greathouse is an NFL player. I think Jordan Faison even has a shot to be an NFL. Either him or Will Paulding, one of those could be an NFL player. I look at younger guys like Micah Gilbert, Elijah Burris. Cam Williams has NFL athleticism. We don't know if he's going to be an NFL player yet, but I'll take a chance on a 6'2", 205-pound kid who runs a 4.4. Like that's NFL talent. I think they have multiple NFL players. The only question that I have is, do they have a high-level NFL player at receiver? Is Malachi Fields a 4th, 5th round type of NFL player? Is Jaden Greathouse a 4th or 5th round type of NFL player? Or are they day 1, day 2 guys? This year's going to tell us. But even with just if they're day 2 and day 3 guys, that's still as much NFL talent as Notre Dame has had since probably 2018, in my opinion. And that's where I think people are missing the boat a little bit with this Notre Dame football team.
I think you hit the nail on the head. And it's about finding out which one of these guys can possibly be that. Different journeys as well. We all know the journey of Jordan Faison. He comes here on a lacrosse scholarship, practice team. He's, making plays, and then you have to get this guy on the field. Jaden Greathouse, big-time player out of Texas, highly rated. He comes in, same class of Rico Flores, and they're expected to produce, right? And we talked about the lack of depth at that position when they came in. Didn't really have time to develop, battled some nagging injuries, and then seemed to hit his stride late last season going into the playoffs. And then you have Will Pauling, really shined, and I think exceeded expectations coming out of Flossmoor, Illinois, here in Chicago, getting up to Wisconsin, connection with Mike Brown, just one of those tenacious receivers, a technician, and a little bit more athletic than most people think. And then he shocks you and makes plays. And then you talk about Malachi Fields, of course. Was it the offense? Was it the lack of quarterback play that had him only produce 808 yards, 50 receptions, and 5 touchdowns, right? So now that he's in a better environment, does he explode from a production standpoint, or do we find out where he's just a 50 reception, 800 to 900 guy in college? And then, like you said, is that a 4th round pick in the NFL draft, 3rd round pick? He'll be able to decide that this year. So I think when you look at all of that, it's really a great opportunity.
Yes.
It's really a great opportunity. And I think, I'll be honest, I think the beneficiaries from the transfers will be Jordan Faison and Jaden Greathouse. I think that competition was needed to push them.
And the protection is needed.
And protection as well. But then you want to talk about the next position that you can add to this. I think the improvement on the outside is going to make it even better for Eli Raritan, who we already think is an elite tight end. He's going to have even more room if they do, talking about the wide receivers, if they produce and they can become who we think they can become as a group, that just leaves the middle of the field wide open for the tight ends to do what they need to do. I'm super excited about the combination of the wide receivers and tight ends and how Mike Denbrock can use them.
What I was going to say, Shaun, first of all, of all the skill positions, the one that I think has the thinnest amount of NFL talent on it is tight end. I mean, I don't know, other than James Flanagan, I don't know that there's another NFL tight end on the roster. I want to see how Ty Washington and Jack Larson develop, but as of right now, if you were to say, hey, Bryan, you got to bet your mortgage. You have to. I'm making you. You're going to bet them on them being in the NFL or not? I'm going to say probably not. And if they are, they're like undrafted free agent pickups to get invites. Based on what we know right now, that could obviously change in a couple of years. And I've heard some good things about what both of those guys are doing in camp. But if we're being objective and looking, I say, look, they got a long way to go before they can prove that they have NFL type of talent or production. And so that's actually my bigger concern. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, Shaun. Are we talking about running backs, tight ends, receivers individually? But when you look at them as a collective, the fact is there's a lot of NFL talent on this offensive skill group this year. Very different from last year. When you go last year, your top receiver was a guy that was undrafted free agent. Now, did a great job making the Giants roster. Super pumped for Bo. But there's a difference between Bo Collins and Malachi Fields from a high-level standpoint. You're getting a year 2 version of Jaden Greathouse as a starter. You're getting another year of Jordan Faison being developed, but then you're getting rid of a Jaden Harrison who was not even he wasn't an NFL talent. He wasn't even an NFL talent receiver at Marshall. He had like 20 catches for 400 yards at Marshall in his senior year. He was an NFL player. Chris Mitchell had a breakout 5th year at FIU. Thought he could do some things in Notre Dame, but there's a big difference between those guys and like what Will Pauling has done, who's been a productive receiver in the Big Ten. And then you look at like Micah Gilbert. The overall talent level receiver has significantly upgraded this offseason, in my opinion. And then running back is loaded. You have a high-level pick at tight end, high-level talent at tight end. I think when I look at it overall, the skill talent is significantly better than it was. Looking at, is it good enough to be a national champion? That remains to be seen, but it's the closest we've seen them from a collective of running back, tight end, and receiver in a very long time. Because I would argue you could find better receiving cores on paper than the one that they have right now. You could find better tight ends than the one they have right now. But put all three of them together, they haven't had a running back room anywhere close to this, top to bottom, in a long time. And with all due respect to Audric and Logan and Kyron and Dex and Tony Jones and Josh Adams and Torian Folston and Theo Riddick and Sear Wood and Jonas Gray and Darius Walker and Armando Allen and Robert Hughes. I mean, I'm just going to name all the guys that they've had. None of them have the God-given talent that Jeremiah Love had. And you got to, and I don't even know, I mean, maybe Julius did, especially, kind of before a little banged up a little bit, but Julius was a stud. Julius Jones is a stud. Julius would have had a much different looking career if he'd have played on better teams. That's what kind of sucked for his career, is he just did play on Notre Dame teams and weren't very good. You put Julius Jones behind the 2017 Notre Dame offensive line, and we're having some fun talking about his single season rushing record that'll never be broken. That's kind of the conversation we're having. But that's a long time ago, Shaun. That's over 20 years ago. And so when you look at the collective of all three plus the quarterback, this is why I think Notre Dame doesn't have any more talent excuses to not have an offense good enough to play for a championship. Because there's two ways to look at it. Do you have a couple high-level players, or do you have a deep collection of NFL talent? I don't know that other than Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame has another first-round draft pick on its current offensive skill positions, meaning not quarterback, not offensive line. I don't know that. But there's a lot of day 2 and day 3 guys on there. And then you've got potential first-round draft pick talent on the offensive line that will be getting as many snaps on Sunday night as I'm going to get in the game. Partly by injury, partly because they're not starting yet because they're young. And it's the collection of it all. It's the depth of NFL talent, not so much the 3 or 4 high-level guys. You can win that way. Go look at LSU in 2019. Did they put did their offense have 13 guys that played in the NFL on it, that played that year? No. I think you had 6 or 7. But those 6 or 7 were Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, elite talent. But then the other guys were
they were a mixture of a 5-star, a 3-star, a 4-star. You have to be able to go to all levels from a ranking standpoint, evaluate and find the talent, and to be able to develop it. So that for me is what this. I think I'm going to bet that Malachi Fields is going to show I'm better than what I did in Virginia, now that I'm surrounded by other great players. I do think he's going to elevate his play. I don't know from a number standpoint what it's going to be. I expect him to eclipse 5 touchdowns this year.
Oh, sure.
I expect him to eclipse that. Jaden Greathouse, I think this is going to be his best statistical year. Right. So I would expect those two guys to lead from a statistical standpoint. And then outside of that, could this be the year they have 4 wide receivers with at least 30 receptions? And some people say 30, that's a low bar. I mean, dude, we're talking about the last time we had 3 with 40 is 2018. So, that's something to shoot for, but it's something definitely within the realm of possibility. And like you said, if Malachi Fields does produce, and let's say he goes over 1,000 yards this year with 8 touchdowns, I think NFL scouts would flirt with him getting up there late second, third round.
Look, if
Especially if
Miles
Notre Dame
Boykin
is
can be a
winning.
third-round draft pick, Shaun, then
Heck yeah.
Yeah, if Chase Claypool can be a second-round draft pick. And what I mean by that is those aren't shots at those guys. Those are guys that really just had 1 or 2 years of production. And Miles Boykin had 1 year of production in Notre Dame, and then he went and blew up at the combine. Chase Claypool had really like 2 good years of production. Like 2017, he had like 20-some catches for 400 yards. Then he had like 50 catches for over 600 yards as a junior. Then as a senior, he blows up and has 1,000 yards. Like if Malachi Fields catches like 900 yards worth of passes, his career production will blow away Chase Claypool's. And he already has blown away Miles Boykin's production. He's had 2 Miles Boykin seasons already in college with Anthony Calandry at quarterback. So, like to your point, Shaun, like yes, he could if he then goes to the combine and blows it up. And based on Bruce Feldman, what Bruce Feldman said about him on the freaks list last year, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So certainly there, but I'm trying to be conservative and say, like if he was a surefire first round draft pick, he doesn't transfer to Notre Dame. The NFL would have said, "Dude, we don't care about your quarterback problems. You're a first round NFL draft pick. Come." Like I'm just trying to look at it like practically and say he'd have to prove some things to be that kind of guy, which is what you're saying. But I just think overall offensively, and we'll move over to the defense next and wrap it up with the defense, Shaun. But the reason we spent so much time on the offense is because I don't know that people doubt the defensive talent as much. I think the doubts and the questions are legitimately still about the offense. Do they have the skill talent? Do they have a Jeremiah Smith? No, but neither does anybody else in college football other than Alabama with Ryan Williams. I don't think anybody has a Jeremiah Smith. That's not the gauge. Otherwise, it's like, we'll just hand the trophy to Ohio State because nobody has a Jeremiah Smith. That's not how football works. Do you have the depth of talent to have that kind of offense? And I think that Notre Dame has that. Now, will that talent manifest itself to a championship degree this season, or will it be more so next season? That's the question. And we'll find that out here a little bit. Like, obviously, we talk about, we're getting ready to play the first game, Shaun, and obviously looking at some of the FanDuel stuff for this particular game, with Notre Dame being a minus 2.5 point favorite. Their money line's minus 134, 50.5 over under. But we've talked about like some of the things where you look at like Notre Dame from a national championship odds, and you look at it in Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, LSU, Clemson, or actually it should be, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama, all have higher odds than Notre Dame. They're tied with LSU and Clemson. And I think a reason why Notre Dame, who's the national runners up, is still that far down on the FanDuel picks to odds to be an NFL team is because of this right here. I don't think people view them as having. I think Notre Dame's team last year was viewed as a bunch of smart, try-hard guys that just were incredibly well coached, which they were, and just caught some breaks in a year where it was a down year in college football, which it was. Where I think people miss the boat is I don't think people understand just how much NFL talent that Notre Dame had. Sure, Xavier Watts is not a first-round draft pick. I don't care where he was picked. He's now a starter as a rookie in the NFL. Like, first game of his NFL career, he's starting for the Falcons. I don't care what you say. He's an NFL player, high-level NFL player. And I think that when you look at this team overall, I still think I think a lot of national analysts look at Drake Bone and think, not the greatest athlete, but boy, we're a really tough Midwestern kid. And I'm like, well, no, he's a tough Midwestern kid, kind of, but that kid's a pretty darn good athlete. But when you look at him, there's just those stereotypes that go with a Notre Dame white linebacker. Can we just be honest about that? Where they don't even dig into, okay, what does he play athletically? That's just what they do. And so that's where I think people are missing the boat. I don't think people realize just how talented this team are. They look at Leonard Moore and like, what an elite player, and just assume everybody else are just these really quality try-hard guys. There are very few national analysts that look at this team and say, that team can run. Very few. But including some Notre Dame people, Shaun.
I want to talk about what you just said. Let's take Jack, JD, and Drew Tranquill. They fit that narrative you just talked about. Drew Tranquill has pretty much become the rock in the middle of that Kansas City defense. Can you imagine Drew Tranquill minus the knee injuries?
Oh, yeah.
Two of them. The level he's minus if he never got injured, can you imagine how athletic he would be? How fast he would be right now in the NFL? Mm-hmm. I think Jack Kaiser shocked everybody with how fast he was when he ran at the pro day and how well he's even playing in the preseason. Has played in the preseason. Mm-hmm. JD got down to Atlanta, and they were like, oh, man, he's better than we thought. So you're right. You know, you can put these stereotypes out there about kids, but unless you play next to them and come to understand, for me, some of the people, like you said, some people that covered Notre Dame, even when Drake was being recruited, will watch film and say, I don't know, and I just happened to have a chance to see him off the football field and saw him play shortstop and third base and make certain moves coming in on the ball. They showed me like, yo, this kid I saw him steal second and third base on back-to-back pitches. And I'm like, okay, this kid is a little bit more athletic than people think. You can't always just view it through the prism of just football. When you get an opportunity to see these other guys, like I love seeing, big guys that play basketball because I get to see their feet. I get to see them move their feet. I get to see them hedge out on the screen and stop the guard or switch on the guard and stay in front of them. Those are things that in recruiting, it goes beyond the film, and you get to see them in other aspects that shows you just how good or just how, tight hip they might be, And so you spoke to something right there that I think Drake is going to go a long way and kind of eradicate. Because I do think he's a very smart player. That's number one.
Yes.
I think to gain the trust of Al Golden midway through your freshman year, for Al Golden to tell the media, if he needs to go out there and play, I trust him. I trust him to be able to lead, make the calls, make the checks. That's huge. And so I think he is, does he harken back to, Stonebreaker, Bolcar, Pritchett, Bursich, and those guys? Maybe, some people want to try to typecast him as that, but I think he's definitely a better athlete than some people realize, and I think that
he's more Stonebreaker than he is Bolcar. And Stonebreaker's pretty darn good at it. He's more Stonebreaker than he is those other guys. But Drake's 6'2", 235. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like you mentioned Jack Kaiser, and he ran a 4.2, like his 40 time of 4.62 is good. It's not great, but it's good. He ran a 4.2 in the shuttle, which would have been the number one linebacker number at the combine. And he ran a 6.8 in a 3-cone drill. That's good for a defensive back. But you don't hear what a heck of an athlete he is. It's like what a smart guy he is. I would actually say if you actually broke down Jack's film, he probably made more run fit mistakes than Drake did last year, the second half of the season, because he was still learning to be an inside linebacker. That's not a knock on Jack. I mean, he'd been outside in the perimeter his whole career, his first 5 years. Very different than playing Will all day. But that kid's athletic. And yeah, he is a try-hard guy, but he's athletic. And I still laugh when people were shocked at Drew Tranquill's combine. Drew Tranquill ran a 4.57 at the combine. Like Drew had one of the best. He had a 1.54 10-yard split, had a 37.5-inch vertical, a 10.2 broad jump, a 6.9 3 cone, and he had a 4.14 20-yard shuttle. and did 31 reps on the bench, and people are shocked. And I'm like, why? Did you not watch his film the last 2 years? He was playing safety 2 years ago. What are we talking about here? Why are we talking about athleticism? I had Notre Dame fans that I would talk to were shocked that he's a better athlete than Tavon Coney. I was like, did you not watch film the last 2 years? Tavon was a heck of a college player. Nobody should have looked at Tavon Coney and thought he was a better athlete than Drew Tranquil. Wasn't even close. But like to your point, there's this perception, and I think that still exists at Notre Dame. There's this, Malachi Starks is a much better athlete than Xavier Watts. Xavier's just smart. I'm like, the combine and pro day numbers don't reflect that. Because Xavier had a better vertical jump than Malachi did. Xavier ran a 4.55 and Malachi ran, I think, a 4.5 flat. Their other overall numbers were almost identical, but there's this perception that the guy at Georgia had the better numbers. Jack Kaiser had much better combine numbers and pro day numbers than Barrett Carter, but nobody accuses Barrett Carter of being a really good try-hard player. And I think the stigma exists for a lot of reasons, and we can make them ones that I don't care to have a conversation as much about right now. I think a lot of it's just they see Notre Dame and they see here, and they just assume that this because he's Notre Dame. I think if you put Jack Kaiser on Alabama's defense and have the same exact career, people aren't questioning his athleticism. That's just what I think. So I think that's where a lot of people are missing the boat about this Notre Dame team, Shaun, including, as I was talking about before, you and I were having this conversation during last season where there's people that are Notre Dame people that were having debates with me about Notre Dame doesn't have the athletes anywhere close to the athletes that Texas and Georgia have.
And I think, honestly, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they are zeroing in on the high elite athletes.
Like receiver.
Maybe they're saying
I'll still take Notre Dame's receivers over Georgia's receivers last year, Shaun. I'm just saying Notre Dame's receivers caught the ball when it was thrown at them.
Yeah, I'm just giving the benefit of the doubt. Just to say maybe that's what they're focusing on. But I think we know, no one can refute that the athleticism on this roster has shifted in the last 3 seasons. It's shifted tremendously. And it looks like it's going to continue to trend upward and continue to ascend. So, I know we have moved to defense, but I see 7 NFL players in the offensive line room as it currently stands right now. I'm not going to debate what round, but I look in the offensive line room, it's like,
it's a minimum number.
Minimum 7.
I think that's a minimum number. If we take away non-freshmen,
yes,
I think your number of 7 is where I'm at.
Yes.
Take away non-freshmen. I think your whole starting offensive line right now will have a shot to be NFL players to varying degrees. Kind of like the 17 offensive line. They were all in the NFL. Now, 2 of them went undrafted, but they played in the NFL. They started games in the NFL. The 2015 offensive line, all 5 would have been in the NFL if Steve Elmer didn't. Actually, all 5 would have been drafted if Steve Elmer didn't quit football to move on to a career in politics. All 5 would have been drafted. Steve Elmer left Notre Dame as a true junior who had started 3 years, basically, at Notre Dame. If he'd have come back and been on that team in 2016, he would have been drafted. There's no question about it. And so you have the 5 starters, plus you have potentially 2 of non-freshmen, could a Styles Prescott eventually become one? Obviously, Charles Jagasaw, Selvin Absher, could he become an NFL player? You've got a Christopher Tarrick. You've got, again, we're just talking Joe Otting. Not all those guys are going to be NFL players, but I think 1 to 2 of them have a shot to be an NFL player before we even get to the freshman class with Will Black and Matty Augustine in that group. So, yeah, there's no questioning the talent in Notre Dame offensive line. The question is, for this season, okay, a lot of those guys are young. Anthony Knapp's still a true sophomore. Gerby's a true sophomore. Nobody's been a starter for more than a whole one season. Those things exist, but the talent is not a question. So that's what I'm saying, Shaun. You can't say, well, you got this really good skill talent, but you don't have the offensive line. Yeah. We have great offensive line talent, but you don't have the skill talent. This is not like a lot of past Notre Dame teams. This is more like the 15 team with better depth than it is anything else, in my opinion. I'm not saying it is 15 because I don't know that you have a Will Fuller or a Quentin Nelson or Ronnie Stanley, but I would argue that you have a better quarterback situation post-Virginia on this team. With all due respect, I'll take redshirt freshman CJ Carr over redshirt freshman Deshaun Kaiser. I think you have a better running back situation on this. Even if everybody's healthy, you have a better running back situation now.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I would take Will Fuller over anybody else, as much as I love Amir and Chris Brown, I think the rest of this receiving core is better than that one is.
Yeah.
And I think your tight end situation is better. You had in 15, you had Durham Smythe, and then after that, it was like Nick Wisher, Tyler Latua, and then you had Alizé Mack. Because when Durham Smythe got hurt against Virginia, Alizé Mack, as a true freshman, stepped into the starting lineup. That's not happening right now if Eli Brandon goes down. You're not going to have James Flanagan, who was a top 100 recruit, in my opinion, step in and be the starter. So that's kind of where I'm at. But you look at like the 15 offensive line, you had McGlinchey was a first-round pick. Actually, Notre Dame's 15 offensive line had 3 top 10 NFL draft picks on it. Stanley went number 6, Q went number 5, McGlinchey went number 9, and Nick Martin was a second-round draft pick on that line.
Yep.
Steve Elmer's the only one that didn't get drafted, and he would have got drafted if he didn't quit football.
Yeah.
You had Will Fuller was a first-round draft pick. C.J. Prosise was a third-round draft pick. Deshaun Kaiser was a second-round draft pick. Alizé Mack was a seventh-round draft pick. That's what you had on that team on offense in 2015. And then you had a guy that was going to go on to be one of the most prolific rushers in Notre Dame history, was a freshman on that team, and Josh Adams, who set the freshman rushing record that year and then almost broke the single-season rushing record in 2017. You also had Dexter Williams on that football team. So that was a very talented – I think this team is closer to that talent-wise. Maybe not quite the high-level top 5 NFL draft pick thing, but, I mean, would it shock you if we go back and we're talking about Gerby Lambert being a top 10 NFL draft pick, looking back to his redshirt freshman year as like we do Quentin Nelson's redshirt freshman year?
Not at all. No. And I love the substance. I'll break it down like this. I'm still waiting to see what people have written and talked about with Caden Proctor. I'm still waiting to see it.
Right.
This is junior year.
Well, that goes back to 5-star player.
Because I know the buzz. Like
he's a good player.
Good player, but I'm waiting for him to meet the expectations of what has been reported.
Well, that goes back to my whole point, Shaun. If Alex Leatherwood is playing at Iowa, he's not, or let's say he's playing at Illinois, he's not a first-round draft pick.
No.
He's not a day 2 draft pick. Not based on what he did in the NFL. I've said this going back to his time at Alabama. I was like, that guy's a good offensive lineman in college. He's not the stud people make him out to be. That is SEC Alabama hype. You can see it on film, Shaun.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people that like really know offensive line play were laughing when the Raiders picked him at 17. Like, it was hilarious watching like the real ones back then that cover the draft, like former NFL offensive linemen on Twitter. Like, seriously? Like, you picked that guy at 17?
Yeah.
Because you could see it on film. And that's the thing with Caden Proctor. Could he become that? Maybe. But he hasn't been that way. That's why it didn't – like, Ronnie Stanley never got the love as a college offensive lineman from analysts in college as he got from NFL teams. Never. Because he was not a top 100 recruit from Las Vegas and played at Notre Dame, not in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's frustrating about it. So anyway, back to the defensive side. Back
to defensive line. Let's get to we did linebackers. The group.
Well, I just think overall linebacker. I think there's a lot of high level talent at linebacker.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, I think your whole 2 deep is NFL players. Now, what degree? That's a question. Is Jaden Ausberry a guy that's a day 3 pick, an undrafted free agent? Who knows his career? He's just going to be a redshirt sophomore this year. But he's an NFL player. Yeah. Jalen Sneed, is he a day 2 pick? Is he a day 3 pick? Is he an undrafted free agent? I don't know. But he's going to be on an NFL football team.
Mm-hmm.
And, at least coming out of, at least a camp. Now, instinctively, discipline, but athletically, he's there. Drake Bowen's going to be a high-level NFL draft pick. Day 2, potentially type of guy. Kingston is a day 2 type event, pick. Now, when I say day 2, that's elite for linebackers because you don't see a lot of off-ball linebackers getting picked in round 1 anymore.
No.
You just don't see it a whole lot. And then behind that, you've got Madden Faremo, Teddy Rizak, Bodie Cahoon, Anthony Sacca. There's a lot of talent and athleticism on this team. And I think it was Max Bulla who said that Bodie Cahoon's probably the best athlete they have at linebacker.
Oh, we said that watching his senior film.
Yeah.
It's like you saw his production his junior year, and you were wondering, like, yo, how in the world is he making this many plays? And then all of a sudden you watch his senior film and he got even better, you know. And
as a junior, he was transitioning. He started the season playing
safety
and then moved to linebacker.
Yeah. So you talk about that. I think for today's game, like you said, they've even raised the bar. Because, I mean, the linebacker position in Notre Dame, once again, has been set in stone. Productive, Buckets Award winners, but there is the outside of Jalen Smith, everybody else had that stereotype of being kind of like the slower linebacker. And if Jalen doesn't get injured in the bowl game, he's probably one that breaks the ceiling. He's a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And maybe that
Jeremiah Wusu-Kormo was a second-round pick because he was undersized, but he could run. Manti was the traditional throwback middle linebacker. But here's the thing that's different now. Nobody at linebacker, and I love Drake Bowen as much as anybody, but Drake Bowen's not Manti, and he's not Jalen Smith. I don't know that anybody in college football Anthony Hill's not those guys. They were rare generational players that played 3 years apart, really a year apart, because Jalen's freshman year was the year after Manti left. The difference is Manti, when he was a great linebacker at Notre Dame, did not have a great linebacker unit around him. Jalen was one of the greatest ever do it at Notre Dame, but did not have a great linebacker room around him. You started to get a little bit better with Jeremiah, but even then, it was a guy like a Drew White who made an NFL, camp, but as an undrafted free agent because he was 6 foot, 220 pounds. This is the first time that you could say that Notre Dame has where you could actually debate who their best linebacker is. I think it's Drake. You could argue it's going to be somebody else this year or somebody else down the road. So I think Kingston might be better than Drake down the road. That's okay. It's fine, Tank. I'm not going to disagree on that. He's not better now. But if you tell me when their careers are over that you look back and say Kingston was better than Drake, okay, I could see that. I can argue it with you. Whether I agree or disagree, I think Jaden Ausberry could end up being that guy. I think Matt Framo could end up being that guy. That's the difference now, Sean, is it's not just Jalen and I'm trying to think of, it's not Casey and the Sunshine Band. It's not Jalen and the Sunshine Band. You know what I mean? It's not, Jalen Smith and the Pips. It's where it's the star and then a bunch of, side dancers doing their thing. It's you've got the Four Tops, you've got the Temptations, you've got, you know what I mean? Like you've got the group that is filled with stars to varying degrees. And that's what's different about this than that. And that's true at a lot of places. There's places where Notre Dame had elite players, but then the rest of the room wasn't great. And this is what I've talked about in 2012. I'll take Notre Dame's top 5 players and say they can absolutely hang with Bama's top 5 players in 2012. And people look at me sideways and you're like, hold. I'm like, yeah, Zach Martin, Stephon Tuitt, Manti, Tyler Eifert, and then you can pick whoever else you want to be your 5th, whether it's Cap, Lewis Nix, Chris Watt, like pick your 5th guy. I'll take that 5 against their 5. The difference is 6 through 20 wasn't even close in Alabama's favor. And that's the difference.
I totally agree with you. Now I'm excited to talk about defensive line, bro.
Yes.
I'm excited. Let me tell you, let me throw some flowers. Because of the rosters and the guys that made the NFL rosters, I'm going to throw some flowers at what Mike Elston kind of started. Because Mike Elston, from a developmental standpoint, he would go get guys and it would be like, okay. By the time they left, you had some really good, productive college football players along that defensive line,
Can
right?
I throw somebody in there with you, Shaun?
Oh, absolutely.
We got to throw Keith Gilmore into that conversation as
You're
well,
right.
because he's the
Mm-hmm.
one that went and recruited Khalid and Dalen
Mm-hmm.
and Adi, and then that same year, Elston recruited Julian Akwara.
Yeah.
So, like, yes.
Yeah, both of those guys deserve a lot of
Yes.
credit for what was established on the defensive line. And they just couldn't continue what they had with, Sheldon, Tuitt, Big Daddy, you know what I'm saying, Lewis Nix. They fell off after those three. You started to see a drop off as far as the interior, but just the production development at the defensive end position for a long time in the Brian Kelly era was pretty good. You didn't have that first round talent,
It's
that
very
top 10
inconsistent.
pick. It was inconsistent,
Yeah.
but it was
who
like
recruited the only. Let me say this. You know who recruited the only first round draft pick on the defensive line in Notre Dame? You know who recruited him? Since the Brian Kelly era, who recruited the only first round draft pick for Notre Dame? It's a bit of a trick question. It wasn't a defensive line coach. It was an offensive coach. It was Harry. Harry Heastan recruited Jerry Tillery. Remember, he was supposed to come to Notre Dame and play offensive line. And then he decided late in the process that he was going to go play defensive line because LSU was trying to flip him and get him to play defensive line. So Notre Dame was like, fine, you want to play defense? You can play defense. Yeah, Harry Heastan. Add that to the Harry Heastan legend. He also recruited the only first-round draft pick at Notre Dame in the last 15 years on the defensive line. I'm just saying.
Shout out to Jerry Tillery, man. Jerry Tillery gets to play next to Chris Jones now. Yeah. So we'll see if his game can take a step forward. But no, that's a great tidbit. That's a great tidbit. But no, I'm excited to talk about this defensive line because I do think they're just specifically a defensive end. Man,
we might see real 5. Quick, Shaun,
go ahead.
As a bit of a, because I was very frustrated with defensive line recruiting during the Mike Elston and Keith Gilmore tenure because of the lack of consistency. But early on I thought it was because of Elston. As I got closer, tied into the program, you realize there were deeper problems that went all the way to the top that kept him. He'd be in position to get a guy, and then other factors would, like he'd be in a great position with the D lineman, and then that guy would meet Brian Van Gorder and be like, F that, I'm not playing for Notre Dame. I'm being serious. Or meet Brian Kelly and be like, nah, I'm good. Like, there was a lot of guys that I think Elston could have landed if not for other issues. So, like, it was a frustrating – there was no consistency. You'd sign a 2015 class that had 4 D tackles, no DNs, and then a 2016 class that had 4 DNs, no D tackles, and you just want to pull your hair out. And I think that has changed dramatically as I want to lead you into this, Shaun. That's where Marcus Freeman has and his staff, and big shout out to Al Washington for this. That's where this staff has made the biggest impact when it comes to recruiting a position over the last 15 years. Because what about quarterback? Well, what's funny is I don't know that they've recruited quarterback very well under Marcus Freeman. But there was a time from 2011 to 2015 where they recruited quarterback pretty darn well. Everett Golson, Gunnar Keel, Malik Zaire, Deshaun Kaiser, Brandon Wimbush. That's pretty good. Pro-style quarterbacks are recruiting better now. But this is the position more than any other outside of maybe corner where you've seen the most dramatic change in just high-level NFL talent. And I wanted to lead you into the specific conversation with that because I think I do want to point out that this is a unique thing to Marcus Freeman where the receiver thing, we've seen stretches like that in the past. We've seen stretches where running back recruiting has been good. We've seen stretches where offensive line was already good. Tight end was already good when Freeman. It's just like it was kind of like don't screw it up kind of thing with your hires. This side of the ball, linebacker was one, but now so D-line. where this is where the game has changed under Marcus Freeman.
And I think it's been a mixture, right? Identification. I think there were certain things that he identified. He wanted to get bigger and longer and more athletic, right? Everywhere. And I think we've seen that. We even saw it stretch to the back end with the safety haul from the 25 class. But they knew they would have to go out and supplement early on during Marcus Freeman's tenure on the defensive line. That's where you go and you get the RJ Obens to come in out of Duke, and then you get John Baptiste out of Ohio State. And both of those guys, I know John Baptiste was playing for Washington last year.
I believe he's on their team this year as well. He's
still on the team this year.
I believe so,
yeah. So, and even when those guys came in, I don't know how much we really expected to get from them. There was a need to get production from them, but I don't know if there was really high expectations for either guy. But they went and did the work, right? Because we were very critical of Al Washington during that time, particularly on the interior from a recruiting standpoint. But while he was working things out on the interior, you get on Bryce Young, you go and get Logan Thomas. And at the time, Logan Thomas was somebody that you had to convince me, like, no, this is a pretty good pickup, right? You talk about the two guys they have in the 26 class. You talking about Dunham, Utade, and then what they have on the inside, with Golden and I was about to say the other kid, Tiki.
Mm-hmm.
A class defensively that can literally be on the field at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you talk about how inconsistent. You go back to 15, 16. Now you got a class of all defensive ends. The next class is all defensive tackles. Well, now we're starting to see from a recruiting standpoint, a consistent class where you're filling all the needs and you're stacking one year after another. And so that is going to reap the benefits that we're looking for to change that narrative on the defensive line. And then, like you said, Notre Dame geographically, there are not a lot of big defensive tackles in the Indiana area. If you can get one and sneak one out of Ohio, every now and then you might get one out of Illinois that you can get on. And there were a couple in the 26 class that they liked, but they just liked some other guys better.
Right.
So
right. Like they liked King Liggins. They liked him. They thought he was a good player. They liked Mikael Blade. Thought he's a good player. And to me, this is what separates this recruiting operation from the past, Shaun, is in the past, they just would have pushed early for Gabe Hill, Mikael Blade, and maybe even the kid from Indiana that went to Purdue, or from Illinois that went to Purdue. Is O'Brien. What is this?
Joey O'Brien. No, he went to Vanderbilt from Mark Carmel, the O'Brien kid.
Yes, he went to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I knew it was.
And then
black
they had the other kid that Brayton Jones that ended up at USC. Right. That was another kid they were interested.
Partly because Notre Dame didn't push for him early on. Like Notre Dame would have landed many of those kids, and it would have been a good D-line class. Mikael Blade's a good football player, Shaun. If he would have committed to Notre Dame, you wouldn't have heard me complaining about it. If they would have got King Liggins, you wouldn't have heard me. I love King Liggins on film, but you wouldn't have heard me complaining about it. Hey, these are good pickups. But they're not Ebenezer Utade. They're not Rodney Dunham. They're not Elijah Golden. And this is where I give Al Washington a lot of credit with this cycle, especially, Shaun, is he took some risks in this recruiting cycle, some major risks. And he had belief in himself and the operation to say, I'm willing to turn down a Mikael Blade and a King Liggins and a Damari Simeon who wanted to commit to Notre Dame, but Notre Dame said, we're not ready to take you right now. We have other guys higher on the board. And he turned those guys down. And he bet on himself and said, because I think I can get even better. Because he watched the playoffs last year too. He wants to be able to throw. He doesn't want to lose a Boubacar and realize we don't have any other Boubacars. He wants to lose a Boubacar And he's like, I want to be like Mike Mickens. I want to lose a Benjamin Morrison and replace him with a Leonard Moore. And I think that's kind of where this came from. He understands, look, if we want to get to here, I mean, you got to remember, this guy was at Ohio State when Chase Young was there. He knows what an elite defensive lineman looks like. He coached Harold Landry and Zach Allen at Boston College. He understands what that looks like. And he said, hey, look, we're going to take a chance. We're going to pass on these guys, or at least not take them yet. If they want to commit early, that's on them. But we're not going to panic and kind of get panicked into taking these guys. I'm going to stay the course. And by staying the course, Shaun, he was able to go and get an elite defensive line class. That's a different operation than we've seen in the past, where they would have settled for good football players early, but not elite football players. If Mikael Blade is healthy, he can be an NFL football player, Shaun. I have no doubt in my mind. I think King Liggins could be an NFL football player. I really do. But they're day 3 NFL type of football players. Where Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Utade, Elijah Golden, if they pan out, like if Mikael Blade reaches his full potential, he's a third, fourth round potential draft pick. I believe that. He could be that. If King Liggins pans out, he could be a 5th to 7th round draft pick. If he's do you disagree with that? You agree with that? I think they are. Difference is Ebenezer Utade and Rodney Dunham pan out, their first round draft picks. If Elijah Golden pans out, he's a 1st or 2nd round draft pick. If Tiki Hola pans out, he's a day 2 draft pick. That's the difference.
That's the difference.
That's the difference. Boubacar Traore was a boom or bust type of player, but if he booms, he's a top 15 NFL draft pick.
Yeah.
Bryce Young was a bit of a boom or bust prospect when he got a commitment. Now, he ended up becoming a top 50 recruit, but he wasn't when they got him.
No.
There were people saying, only getting him because his dad's Bryant Young. Well, that was actually kind of part of it for Notre Dame, because they saw Bryce, a 6'4", skinny, scrawny kid with giant hands and giant feet and broad shoulders, and said, I think that kid's going to keep growing. And guess what? They were right. He's 6'7", 270 right now. And he's got first-round talent. He may never have become an impactful player when they got a commitment from him. But they didn't take him as a favor to the dad. They took him because he's Bryant Young's kid, because they said, we see the DNA, we see the frame, we see the shoulders, we see the hands, we see the feet. We realize he's not going to look like a shooting guard in 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Did you remember that picture of him with Marcus Freeman when he was a sophomore? And I'm like, is Marcus Freeman posing with like one of Micah Shrewsbury's or one of Mike Bray's recruits or something like that? He looked like a 2-guard, 6'4", 195-pound 2-guard. But you could just see the body was just like, it was going to fill out. And it filled out a little quicker than I expected. So that's the thing though, Shaun, is like, yeah, these guys they're taking some chances with these guys, but they're taking chances with elite high-level talent, first-round draft pick type talent. And I've talked to people, I've talked about 3 or 4 different people that have some affiliation with NFL people. And the one thing that I've heard multiple times is the surprise that NFL teams have when they've come to practice this fall with the talent that Notre Dame has on the D-line. Like, who's 5? Who's this 88? Who's 47? We know who 95 is. You know, like I'll tell you this funny story, Shaun. I was talking to a Notre Dame staffer, and he was relaying a story to me about an NFL scout came to fall camp or spring practice. It was an NFL coach. A longtime NFL coach was a spring practice. And he said, man, there's an NFL player on your depth chart that's going to surprise some people. And this Notre Dame person said, you talking about Bryce Young? He goes, the son of an NFL Hall of Fame defensive lineman, surprising no one. He goes, I'm talking about 88. I don't know who that is, but 88's got NFL ability. That kid's not even in the 3 deep at D tackle right now, Shaun. So when you look at this and you look at defensive end, Josh Burnham's a really good athlete and a really good football player. So is Junior. Junior was a huge part of the team last year. They're not even starting for this Notre Dame team right now. That's how good Boubacar Traore is. That's how good Bryce Young is. That's how good Jordan Patello can be. You've got at least 5 to 6 NFL players on this team who aren't freshmen at defensive end. Now, Patello, the injury history could make that a little bit shaky, but like if he plays a whole year like he did the first 3 games of last year, that's an NFL football player. Whether that's late, I mean, we're talking like late round draft pick, something like that, but like that's an NFL football player. Somebody in the chat, Joe M just said 5 years ago, those 2 guys are definitely starting too. Not only are Josh Burnham and Junior starting 5 years ago, they're dudes. They're your dudes. You're thinking like these guys are our dudes.
And think about, they both came as linebackers.
Right.
They weren't defensive linemen. They were recruited to play linebacker and transition. I can remember watching Josh Burnham that first spring when he started playing D-line. And I'm like, man, this kid is so small. And then the work he put in, you saw him up at Syracuse weeks later during the season. It's like, oh, okay. This kid is going to be able to fill out. I'm excited to see Cole Mullins. This is kind of like the same thing. What he's recruited for, now you get him into the interior, and he's going to be one of those tweeners where he can probably play inside and then play big end in certain situations, certain packages. But no, the depth, the versatility, what they have at defensive line, you're excited to see Logan Thomas, to see what he can do. You saw Armel Mookum, like, man, he's not even on the 2 deep or the 3 deep right now. But then that just
Chris
goes
Burgess
to show
a year in the Notre Dame strength program.
Good gracious. He's already a grown man. You know what I'm saying? When you see him and you walk up on him. But then this is something I tell people all the time, right? Because I know the names, especially a defensive end, that the Hurricanes have. I know that. Like between the 2 guys, there's 9 sacks coming back from last year. All right, that's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, the 4 guys that started the national championship game on the defensive line are either no longer here, one of them, but the others are back in their backups.
Right.
See that
right. Because you're talking about Gabe Rubio, Josh Burnham, and Junior Tuihalamaka. They're basically the starting defensive linemen. They're not starting right now.
But they started against Penn State. They started against Ohio State, Georgia. Georgia. Those are the guys you rock with to make the playoff run. So don't get it twisted. That wasn't luck. They're good players. Are they Bryce Young? Are they Boubacar Traore?
Right.
No.
Because these aren't shots at Josh Burnham and Junior Tuihalamaka and Gabe
Rubio.
They're not shots at them at all.
Not at all.
Because and if Josh Burnham can play in the NFL.
Yes.
Like there's no doubt in my mind. Josh Burnham's a guy that can get drafted. Gabriel Rubio is a draftable player.
Talk about it, Brian. You have to. It's almost like when you transition to a position, which means now you have to build your body. Like it's not like Bryce Young's coming in already with the NFL body. Now he's just learning the position and getting stronger, right? So he's in position to take off in year 2. Josh Burnham is literally trying to build to that, then trying to learn a new position. So in his development, he's probably half a year to a year behind. And his ceiling might not be as high. But now, with 2 good years under his belt, you're talking about Junior and Josh probably really being able to like become those guys that we see all the time getting to that junior, senior year at Notre Dame. And all of a sudden, it's like, yo, where'd that come from? And so that's where they are in their development.
Shaun, the point is this: whether you have Burnham Jr. on the field, or Logan Thomas on the field, or Patelho on the field, 4 non-starters, or Bryce and Boubacar on the field, you're putting an NFL athlete on the field at defensive end. But you tell someone that who's not like a diehard Notre Dame fan, they're gonna be like, "You're homers." Like, well, no, I'm just telling you this is true, and that's what I'm kind of excited about, Shaun. And I didn't expect this show to go as long as this segment to go as long as it did, but it's just there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that at a lot of these places. Jalen Blair is not in the 2D. He's not traveling this weekend. 2-3 years ago, he's not only traveling, he might start for Notre Dame. Like that. That's where we're at now with Notre Dame, Shaun. 2 guys who started in the postseason and were good football players in the postseason. And Junior had 2 plays against Georgia that were game changers. I've said this, Josh Burnham might have had the biggest play on defense in the Orange Bowl, and nobody talks about it but us. That tackle for loss at the 1 yard line that made it I think it made it 3rd down. It was a 2nd down tackle. Tackles, I think it was Katron Allen behind the line of scrimmage for a 2-yard loss. That forces Penn State to throw. They throw. Singleton drops the ball. They settle for a field goal instead of a touchdown. So now it's 10-3. You get the ball to start the second half with a chance to tie it instead of you could go down the field, get a touchdown at the beginning of the 3rd quarter. You're still down 4 points because you gave up a touchdown. Nobody talks about that play. Josh Burnham's a heck of a football player, but he's not going to start on this team.
And you talk about the confidence.
He's going to play.
Yeah.
He's going to play a lot.
They talk about the confidence that Bryce Young is going to get. Like, oh, man, he was able to play. He got a lot of game experience. That's going to be great. Can you imagine Junior makes the play against Georgia, right? Josh Burnham, the play you just talked about. Can you imagine how much confidence they're going to come back with? Mm-hmm. And how much better that makes the entire unit, the depth of that unit? We know we have high ceiling guys,
right?
But the drop off is not going to be immense. No. It's like you're just coming. Once again, you're coming in waves like Alabama and Georgia.
Right.
You just come at.
But like, look at 2012, Shaun. Look at 2012. I'll take Notre Dame's 3 starting defensive linemen and put it up against anybody from that year. Stephon Tuitt, Lewis Nix, Capron, Lewis Moore. Because Cap blew his knee out in that game and still got drafted in the 5th round. Think about that. Like, Cap, very underrated player at Notre Dame. Tuitt, stud. Lewis Nix, stud. But the problem was when they came off the bench, when they came off the field, you were putting a true freshman in Sheldon Day, who was like 275, 280. You were putting in Tony Springman, great kid, hard worker, important part of that team, and you're putting in the now late Kona Schwenke. None of those guys were NFL players. Sheldon eventually became one. I mean, Sheldon always had NFL talent. He just didn't have an NFL body. As if he needed to fill out and get bigger, and he was still undersized, which is why he wasn't a great player in the NFL. He was a good player, played for a long time, but that's why he wasn't like a Tuitt type of player in the NFL because he didn't have the frame. But you went from that to a big drop off in talent. That's the point. You lose a starting receiver back in the day. You were throwing Robbie Parris on the field. Now that's not a shot at Robbie Parris. But shouldn't be your first guy off the bench, if not starting for you when you've got some of the talent that they have around them. That's the difference with this team. Is you lose a Boubacar or a Bryce Young to an injury, or they got to come off the field for whatever reason. You're throwing in an NFL talent in Josh Burnham. You're throwing in an NFL talent in Junior Chilamaka. You're throwing in an NFL talent in Jordan Pacello. And then on 3rd down, you're putting a 6'5", 220-pound kid who literally runs in the 4.5s in Logan Thomas. Who, this is a true story. You know this to be true. Do you know why Notre Dame didn't recruit Marquise Lightfoot? They thought Logan Thomas was a better athlete, and he is. And Logan Thomas had more of an impact for Notre Dame last year than Marquise Lightfoot had for Miami last year. Who was on the field on 4th down against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl trying to get to the quarterback? Logan Thomas.
Yep.
Right? I mean, so that's a risky evaluation. We go take this kid from Texas is where I got this highly ranked top 100 player from our backyard, or this 3-star kid from Texas. Well, look, I'm sorry. The 3-star kid from Texas, we like better. Now, we don't know if they'll ultimately be proved right or wrong for that. It's just 1 year sample size, but I'm just saying. So I think this is the position, and then cornerback's the other one, Shaun, where they not only have NFL talent throughout the 2 deep, but it's high-level NFL talent throughout the 2 deep. I think Christian Gray, if he just stays on his current trajectory, is probably a day 2 NFL draft pick. Talking to some people around the program, they think if he's capable of taking a jump that could maybe bump him into round 1. Leonard Moore, obviously, we know where he's at. You talk to people around the program, they think Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden are NFL players. And Carson Hobbs, really fast, 6'1" athletic player who also has NFL tools and talent. And so, like, that's the difference, Shaun, now, where why did they have to put Dante Vaughn in? Now, Dante Vaughn was an NFL talent. Dante Vaughn made the Chargers roster. I mean, he was with that team for a few years, but he was very injured that year. Like he was not 100%. Why did they have to put him on the field? You didn't have anybody else. You had to put him on the field. Now, Dante's sitting out, getting healthy, not being thrust into the Cotton Bowl. And those two positions, defensive end, and Brian Smith and I have talked about this for years. That's where Notre Dame was often lacking. And when they would get stud ends, they were usually power ends. Khalid Kareem, Stephon Tuitt. They haven't had. I've said this. I think it's the Javon curse. That's what I think it is.
You know the story there? Yes.
You know the story there? Okay. I think that's what it is. It's the Javon curse. Notre Dame decided not to take Javon Curse, who wanted to come to Notre Dame, and instead they took an offensive lineman who shall not be named because I don't want to throw shade at that guy. They turned him down, Shaun, and they've never been the same since. Hey, am I wrong, Shaun? This is the Javon curse.
No, you're not lying at all.
Got to eventually break the curse. And now I think you got the talent to do so. Because, it's funny. Somebody said to me, was it you that said this to me, Shaun? When I was in the grocery store the other day, was it you that one you know who Boubacar reminds me of? And I was just thinking, he's not going to say it. He's not going to say it. It was like Javon Curse. And I just wanted to scream in the middle of the grocery store. So it wasn't you that said that?
No.
Because I'm in my head, I'm thinking it's the Javon curse.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm thinking that. And this dude who doesn't know this story, so I thought it might have been you. No. But now I think about it. Now I know who it was. It was somebody who I don't think has familiar with me.
Speaking of breaking curses, I don't think it was a curse. But
real quick, that speaks to why you're thinking about it. That speaks to the whole thing about Notre Dame can't recruit players like that. Yeah, they can. Yeah, they chose not to recruit him. Yes. Could you imagine what Javon Curse would have done? Javon Curse would have done in Notre Dame? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. So my question is, going from, let's say, 2014, once again, 2016, you had to play young defensive backs from your freshman class, which helped you when it came to 2018, 2019, because they ended up being a great combo, right? Julian Love, Troy Pride, right? And both of those guys are on rosters in the NFL. So Troy just can't stay healthy. That's his issue. But what has changed? Because you had good players at defensive back, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're able to stack.
Yeah.
You're able to stack. And then 2 years ago, even when we saw the improvement at cornerback, then we had questions with O'Leary at the safety position.
Right. As a recruiter.
But as a recruiter in his last class before he left to go to the NFL, you start to see things change on the back end. So what one or two things do you think were brought by Mike Mickens and Chris O'Leary that kind of changed just from the evaluation standpoint and the recruitment standpoint that leads to this room having the depth that it has right now?
It's about consistency for me, Shaun, because you talk about it. You talk about that great 2016 corner class of Dante Vaughn and Troy Pride Jr. and obviously Julian Love. All three of them played in the NFL. And you go back and watch film, prior to his back injury, Dante Vaughn was the best of the group as a freshman. He was their best freshman on that team. Now, Julian obviously played a bunch that year and Troy played, but Dante was their best one as a freshman. I still remember, who was that pick against, where he just rode a dude vertically and then they threw at him. He picked it off as a freshman. He was legit good. He just had a bunch of back injuries that just stunted his athletic growth. But Dante was legit NFL talent. at Notre Dame. And credit to him for even working as hard as he did to even make it to the league, because there's other lesser athletes who wouldn't even been able to play, much less be able to, with the shoulder and the back injuries that Dante had. But it really was just about, can you now go do it again? Because you go out in the 26. So that was a 2016 class. Can you name for me the cornerback that they signed in the 2017 class, Shaun? Can you name that guy for me?
Was that Crawford's year?
Nope. Shaun was actually the year before those guys.
Yeah, before those guys, right?
Yep.
2017.
Yep. It's a trick question, Shaun. I'm being a jerk face to you right now.
Sure. It probably was Cam Hart, right?
It was nobody.
No. Wow.
It was nobody. They got a commitment from Paulson Adebo. They got a commitment from Paulson Adebo, who literally told people, if Stanford offers me, I'm going to Stanford. They lost him. They had another guy that they lost. And then you got in 2018, and you have, I think, what I believe to be a pretty good corner class. I don't think it panned out the way that we hoped it would pan out, but I think at the time it was a good group in 2018.
Yeah.
You obviously had Houston Griffith as a safety in that class.
Right.
Derek Allen as a safety. Look, they didn't pan out the way we hoped, but at the time they were good players. Tariq Bracy was in the 18 class. Noah Boykin was in the 18 class. Tariq had a very solid career. Noah Boykin was, DJ Brown, they recruited at corner. He was never going to play corner. DJ had a very good career. And then 2019, you don't sign a corner again. And if it wasn't for Cam Hart moving over to corner,
right,
think about where you would be. And that's really
Cam was part of that 18
19 class. The next, he was the 19 class. Yeah. And that was the difference, Shaun, is like you're going into these years, and one year you sign a great class and the next year you don't. So when a guy like Noah Boykin doesn't pan out, you're kind of screwed, because you didn't sign anybody else the year before, the year after. And then, 2019, they signed KJ Wallace, who I liked coming out of high school. KJ's had a nice career, but KJ was a nickel.
Yeah.
He was not going to be an outside corner, you know what I mean? And I liked KJ, and I think who KJ played for last year, but he started at Georgia Tech. He was a starter for somebody last year. I think he's back for a sixth year, I believe.
He was with the Ravens for a while, right? I thought KJ was with the Ravens.
Hold on, let me look it up. No, if he was, I think KJ was I think he was at UCLA last year. I'm pretty sure. And I thought he had I'm thinking about another year, but he started, he had 50 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and a sack and 10 pass breakups last year for UCLA. Now, KJ's a good football player, but he was your only corner in 2019, and he was a nickel. So it was this constant thing of you sign a guy this year that's really good, and then you don't sign anybody that can play the next year. Yeah. Or you take risks the next year. And that's really the difference, Shaun, where, you look at what this current staff has done, and, it's like you look at the Benjamin Morrison class with Jaden Mickey, and then you look at the next year, and it's Christian Gray and Micah Bell, and you look at the next year, and it's Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs, and then the next year it's Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary and Creed Thomas, to where you can have a Jaden Mickey transfer out, you can have a Micah Bell transfer out, but you're still okay because you're doing it every year. That's the difference. Where if you don't do it every year and a Jaden Mickey transfers out, and you didn't go get Leonard Moore, and all of a sudden Benjamin Morrison goes down, and who are you throwing on the field? Clarence Lewis? That's the difference. It's year after year after year. I mean, you were mentioning the Bryce Young, Logan Thomas class. Well, the Boubacar class was the year before. I mean, it's you got to start stacking them, and that's what Notre Dame is doing now defensively that they haven't done in a long time. They would get their studs. I mean, look, they still, with all due respect to Ebenezer and Rodney, they still are a 5-star defensive end away from being able to match the 2011 defensive end class. I mean, I'm sorry. That was one of the best defensive end classes ever for anyone, with Aaron Lynch, Stephon Tuitt, and Ishaq Williams.
Man, people forget about Eshak.
Yeah.
People forget about Eshak.
Hey, and what's sad is he's considered a bust. Had he not got suspended his last year in 14, I think it was 14, was it 13 or 14? He would have been he was coming on. Like that spring, there's a lot of people talking about how Eshak was coming on. Like he was on the verge of like finally figuring it out and then got suspended. But the point is, Shaun, is like, what did they do the next year at defensive end? They got Romeo Okwara, and that's it. Now, Romeo's a heck of a player, but like, you just got one? No, I'm sorry. Actually, Romeo wasn't for a few more years. 2012, they didn't sign anybody. They only signed Jaron and Sheldon. And in 2013, your only defensive linemen were Isaac Rochelle, and you got Rochelle, I think Jacob Matuska, and Eddie Vanderdoes. You didn't get any true edges. It's like that was the 14. You signed 32 of defensive linemen, but like none of them panned out. And the only guy that looked good as a freshman, Andrew Trumbetti, Brian Van Gordon, just basically wasted and just ruined for the next 3 years. But that's the thing, too, is we're seeing a different level of development now. Andrew Trumbetti under Al Washington has a very different career. Andrew Trumbetti was a really good freshman,
Yes.
Got worse as a sophomore, got worse as a junior, got worse as a senior. That's what the trajectory was with a lot of kids back then. Cole Luke, stud sophomore season, solid junior season, bad senior season. Like that happened almost across the board with that era of Notre Dame. So the development is also part of this too, Shaun, is you've got a better strength program, you've got better development, but you're also doing it year after year after year after year. And that's the biggest difference between Notre Dame now and what Notre Dame was before. That's what LSU does. That's what Bama does. That's what Ohio State does. That's what Georgia does. That's what Notre Dame and Texas are starting to do now under their respective coaches. Because you can say, look, Sark's got to prove this to me and that to me, and I'm with you on that. The one thing you can't argue with, that dude's stacking classes back to back to back with dudes. Like, you can't deny that. You can tell me, hey, I don't think Dan Lanning's a great football head coach. That's fine. But one thing you can't do is say that guy's not stacking classes year after year after year. That's what's changing in college football right now. Is it's no longer just Bama, Ohio State, and Georgia doing that. And then Texas A&M has that one great year, and then they not the next. And then USC has that one great class, and then the next year they're 50th. Remember that under Clay Helton? That year they finished like number 3, and then next year they ranked 50th. This is before the portal era. They just were that bad the next year. You know, Ty Willingham has one of the best Notre Dame classes in a long time in 03. It's got like Brady Quinn and Jeff Samardzija and Victor Abiamiri and all these great players. And then the next 2 classes are 2 of the worst classes in Notre Dame history. Like, that's been Notre Dame forever. Brian Kelly has that great 13 class. The next year, you're like, is this the same staff? What's going on right now? How did you guys do that last year? And this is what you're giving me now. And that Marcus Freeman's changed that. Steve Sarkisian has done that for Texas. Dan Lanning is doing that for Oregon, where no longer are the days where there's 3 teams with just rosters better than everybody else. Because now Notre Dame, Texas, and Oregon are saying, hey, we got something to say about this now. And part of it's NIL, but part of it is Sark, Freeman, and Dan Lanning. And you got to give them their credit. Now, we can say all of them have things to prove as head coaches. That's fair. They got a grand total of 0 national titles among them as head coaches. But you know what they do have among them as head coaches? Stacking classes, baby. That's what they're doing. And it's just nice to see Notre Dame as part of that conversation. Where it's like, dude, this is legit NFL talent. I mean, you look at the secondary in the 26 class, Shaun, and you're thinking their smallest guy is Nick Reddish, who's 5'11", 185. Their next smallest guy is Kari Adams at 6'2", 180. That's their next smallest DB. Because Chaz Smith's about 6'2.5", Aiden Pouncey's 6'3", and Joey O'Brien's almost 6'6" now. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, we're talking about a linebacker class with Thomas Davis Jr. and Jacoby Clapper, a pair of 4-star players, and people are like, do you think they need to upgrade at linebacker? I'm thinking this is a great linebacker class 7 years ago. This is like, dude, this is the kind of class you build around, and now people are disappointed in it. You know, they shouldn't be. I mean, the whole goal was to only recruit 2, maybe 3 if you get the right guy. It's not a great linebacker class nationally. I think Thomas Davis was a great pickup, and Jacoby Clapper's got some tools to work with. You know, we're talking about a D-line class that's as good as Notre Dame's had in a long time. Like, these are NFL talents, Shaun. Kari Adams is 6'2", 180, 185. He's super raw. But there aren't more than – he's in that top 5 group of corners in the country when it just becomes a God-given ability. Did you see what Chaz Smith did his first game of high school this senior year? They had like 2 picks last week. You know, Joey O'Brien's a stud. I mean, that's what Notre Dame is doing now. On the other side of the ball, you got Caden Finley, NFL DNA. You've got Ian Premer, who might be the best tight end prospect Notre Dame has signed since Michael Mayer. You know, I mean,
you know something
that's
else
what's
that
fun to watch. Go ahead.
An excuse
by
that
the way,
a lot
Javian
of people,
Osborne went off this past week as well, like last night. So 220 yards on 13 carries, FYI.
To your point, NIL is a factor, but for the most part, great players don't mind waiting their turn behind other great players. For the most part, when you have a great culture and program, for the most part, there are always going to be outliers that want to leave, family influences, outside influences. But for the most part, all the kids that came in this year, Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Creed Thomas, they understand. They know what's in front of them. Mm-hmm. They know it might be 2 years for one guy, 1 year for another guy before that position is open. Mm-hmm. Guess what? I'll be ready. Last year, at a certain point, Bronte Johnson was fighting for the backup spot with Leonard Moore when Benjamin Morrison was playing before he got injured. So this is like what you're talking about. And so if people want to use NIL, no, man, stop putting these stigmas on kids. Kids don't mind sitting behind other kids where they see a culture and a program that can prove that they develop and that they're going to get an opportunity. They don't mind. There are some outliers that's out there for themselves, but for the most part, and this goes down to like evaluation, something that I think Notre Dame has done a great job of evolving at, figuring out, you know what, that kid, we really don't need to give energy to that young man because I don't think we really have a good shot with that guy. So let's go focus on this kid. He's elite as well. We sit really good with him. Let's get him on campus. Let's continue to go at him. I think that's something else that they're becoming better at. But for the most part, finding the right kids, high kids, elite athletes, they come in. You're going to have your Kennedy Urlachers after a year, but it wasn't like he was disgruntled with the program. I don't even think Kennedy Urlacher had a character issue. He just looked at the depth chart.
Here's the deal, Shaun. The kids that do leave, who leave for good, I mean, like, Kennedy wants to play. I love Notre Dame, but I want to play. There was no ill will. There was no he didn't work hard. There was no he was a bad attitude. There was none of that with Kennedy Urlacher. It was he looked at what was in front of him and he looked at what was behind him. And he said, I got to make a business decision. I don't think he was happy about it. I don't think he left with like, forget that place. And that's what you're seeing, Shaun. Some kids are going to leave. I mean, look at Jaden Mickey after he left. Now, look, we've talked about this. I think we somewhat disagree on this. I don't like what he did. I don't like quitting on your team in the middle of the season. You have to look at some of the extenuating circumstances of his life. How would I have handled what he went through at that age, when I was that age? Probably not as well as him. But where was he every freaking Saturday during the season? on home games after he quit the team. Right there, slapping hands with his teammates as they went through the locker room in the stands. Why? Because he loves his team. He loves it to Notre Dame, but he just felt, I have to make a decision that's best for me. And I don't like the way he went about it, but that's just the era we're in now. And I don't mean that era as in like, that's just how kids are now. I just mean that's the rules the adults have put in place. And if you want to do this, this is what you have to do. That's where I'm at. And so, like, even that situation, which I strongly disagree with the way it went, you still watch how his teammates interacted with him, how he interacts with his teammates, and how the coaches interacted with him, and you realize there's love there still. It's just, and I know the coaches didn't agree with the way he went about his decision, but they still love the kid. And so there's still support there. This isn't like back in the day where it's like, we got to get rid of this kid because he's a cancer. Like, there's not that going on, Shaun, because you are recruiting the right type of young men that even when they have to make business decisions, like Kennedy Urlacher did. And honestly, if I wasn't a Notre Dame fan and I was just an advisor of Kennedy Urlacher, he did exactly what I would have told him to do. Hey, man, if you want to get that Notre Dame degree, then you stay here. But if you want to play football and be a starting safety and not just a special teams guy for 4 years, you might want to go somewhere else. And it's not like he's going to Sacramento State or Fresno or UC Davis. He's going to USC. And he's going to have a much better shot of playing there. But there's still, like, you won't see Notre Dame players beefing and talking trash with Kennedy Urlacher before the game. Unless it's like good-hearted, like we would do if we were playing ball against each other when we were in high school, Shaun. You know what I mean? That's a part of it too. So like that's also why the numbers of players leaving is smaller. Because some are like, you know what? I'm going to stay for this degree, then I'll leave. Like Steve Angeli did. You know? You think Notre Dame players are like, man, F Angeli for leaving. Do you think they're like that? Heck no. They get it. Bro, you gave us everything you had. These guys are just better. You're walking out of here having played a role in some important moments in Notre Dame and under Marcus Freeman, and you got your degree and you got the respect of your teammates. You just aren't as good of a quarterback as these guys, and there's no shame in that. That's the difference, Shaun, is you didn't process him out because he's an attitude problem or he's a cancer. He got processed out because he's a veteran who got beat out by two guys who are younger and more talented than he is. And you wish him all the best and you love him to death, and you say go crush it at Syracuse in 11 of your 12 games next season. That's what you say to him. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of what they're doing. But again, Shaun, these aren't just great kids. The Ty Willingham recruited good kids. Ty Willingham graduated 100% of his players. Weren't as talented. Like, great kids.
I think this staff.
I recruited great kids to D3 level. Doesn't mean that I would have recruited them if I moved to. I would, hey man, transfer to Notre Dame if I got a job at Notre Dame. You're a great kid, but you just go ahead and stay there.
You're right good. Where you are. Yeah.
You're right where you need to be, baby. You still can be a star. Yeah, at this level.
Like Marcus Freeman tells his team, be where your feet are. Be exactly where your feet are. Be right there.
Yep.
Oh, that's dope, man. So overall, I actually counted up. I counted 41 potential NFL players on the roster. Just total. Just looking at the roster. So,
like, and not all of them are going to make it. And if we did a roster count at Ohio State or Auburn or, Alabama or Georgia, I think what I would say, Shaun, is I think this number's comparable. And both of us, just so people understand, both Shaun and I used a very conservative pick. Like not guys. Most of these kids on scholarship in Notre Dame could play in the NFL if they've played to their full potential. I would argue that every scholarship offensive lineman in Notre Dame, if he plays to his full potential, can play in the NFL. But we're not going to put all of them on there because that's just not how it works. We looked at talent, opportunity, injury history, all of it, and said, here's who we think are guys that can play in the NFL. and it's over half the kids on scholarship for me. I was a little bit higher than 41, Shaun. But, like, the point is, and I'd be willing to bet you if we compared our lists, we don't have the same exact – most of them will be the same, but we don't have the same exact list. And I would think that if you looked at those other teams, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, it's a comparable number.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I went because I think I definite. It's almost like, guys, they say if you're a Hall of Famer, there should be no doubt. Like, if you ask somebody, is this guy a Hall of Famer? You should be like, yes, he's a Hall of Famer. When you have to think about it, it's like, So for me, that's why my number was lower, because it was guys that I was like, yes. When I had to sit there and think about it, I think out of that group that I thought about, definitely going to get some more to filter into that group as they play, as they get their opportunity. They're going to prove that they are NFL guys, right?
Because some of the guys not on my list, and I would assume yours, are guys who just aren't going to have the opportunity to work themselves in an NFL roster because they're just not going to play at Notre Dame. Like, that's part of it as well. Is that kind of your – because, like, that like – but, like, that's still a high number of no-brainers, Shaun.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll give you one from the 25 class that if you had asked that question during his recruitment, and if you asked that question right now, he probably would be in the I'm not sure pile. But based upon the promising things you've heard about him during the spring and fall, and he gets 1 year of weight, strength, conditioning, you become very interested in what you hear to continue in next spring. Because if he continues to trend upward, then you might have something there because of the athleticism, and that's Dominic Hula. He's a kid, because Chris Burgess came out of Chicago as well. He was overshadowed by Chris Burgess, as a defender. But I told people, every time I talk to a coach that has a coach against him, all he does is wreck game plans. That's all he does. That's all he does. And you share some things with me, some positive things that they said about him.
He's a lot longer than you thought.
A lot longer than you thought. Absolutely. So now you see him grow into his body, get stronger. If he continues to impress, what can he become? I don't think he's going to be on the same trajectory as Bryce Young, but that story of Notre Dame, now you get this kid into his junior year, and all of a sudden this is a really good football player.
Is he on your list of NFL guys?
No.
See, that's the thing. He's not on my list. Davion Dixon's not on my list. Anthony Sacca's not on my list. Cree Thomas isn't on my list right now. Brandon Logan's not on my list right now. Ethan Long's not on my list right now. Those are all guys that are capable with the tools they have to get on the list. That's the whole point, Shaun. It's like Joseph Reif could eventually become an NFL player. He's not on my list right now. And so I think that's what, like, to get to this many people 10 years ago, I would have had to do, like, there'd have been about like 15, 18, like, no-brainers, maybe 20. And then after that, there's a lot of talking myself into, this guy needs to be on it, that guy needs to be on it, and that kind of thing. But, like, there's been NFL teams, there's been Notre Dame teams in the past that have a lot of NFL talent that didn't play to that potential, like we saw, like, in 2011. But, like, that's what encourages me about this team, is because there is even more talent than back then. But I have greater confidence that's going to get developed on both sides of the ball. And that's what gets me excited about it, Shaun. Go ahead with what you're going to say.
No, you said it perfectly, and I think I can't believe we just did 2.5 hours.
I know. We're going to call a little audible here today. We're going to talk about the college football topic next. We're not going to talk about our recruiting topic.
We can briefly talk about the guy. We can briefly talk about the guy.
Well, I want to dive into a little bit more. Maybe you and I can talk about maybe doing a show on Monday. Let's chat about that a little bit, because right now we weren't going to do a show on Monday, so we can chat about that a little bit. We'll see how the post-game show goes on Sunday night, but let's see how that goes. But But yeah, so like that'll do it for kind of this part of the show, guys. We're gonna get into some college football stuff next, but before we do, folks, do us a favor: hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Make sure that you are subscribed to our CFB Nation channel as well. Make sure you're checking out Lucky Lefty as well. They're back in action, going live here as we prepare for the season. And of course, make sure you sign up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. I had a breakdown of the slot fade concept on the board yesterday. Just kind of went through it, provided some numbers and some data. Then broke down about 8 to 10 clips of that play, showing why they throw the front side, why they run the play, what it works against, why they throw the slot fade, why they may not throw the slot fade, when to use it into the boundary, and all that different stuff. I thought it was a lot of fun to do it. Normally I have to take multiple takes, but like I was loving that breakdown. One take. And like 25 minutes of just one take, I was loving it because I start getting into slot fade. I'm like, man, this is such a great concept, and I love this concept, and it's so versatile and all this other kind of stuff. Like, man, I wish they had stuff like this when I played quarterback. You know what I mean? And so, but that's on there. That's for premium members only. You're going to want to check that out at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So, Shaun, let's dive into part 2 of today's show. And we had a lot of fun talking about, like last week, talking about just college football and just in general, just being excited for week 0. Week 0 was a bit of a dud. And last night we had some games. There were some entertaining games, not a lot of great games. And that's just kind of week 1 when you're playing teams that aren't at the top. We have yet to see the best teams play, and we're going to start to see that tomorrow. So what we're going to do here in part 2 is Shaun and I are going to talk about some of the games, some of the matchups, because matchups aren't always games. Matchups could be, I want to watch this line against that line. We're going to talk about some of the big games from this weekend, some of the matchups we're excited to see, and then some players we're excited to see in week 1, because there is a bit of a changing of the guard in college football this year, as you kind of have every season, either at a position or in a conference or with a team or whatever the case may be. Or there's at least a perceived potential changing of the guard happening, and then the season plays out, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And so he and I are both fired up about week 1, and so we're going to dive into that here on the Irish Breakdown podcast here, presented by FanDuel. And we're going to first look, Shaun, about some of the top. Give me some of your top matchups. Give me some of your top games. How you can start it however you want to do it. Actually, let's do games first because I want to get some predictions from you also. Well, let's talk about this as we go into the weekend. There's games on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday this week. Yeah. Let's talk about some of the games, Shaun, that you are most excited to watch this weekend.
Of course, the big games, we'll save that, but I have 4 games that intrigue me, and some of them are connected to the guys and the players that I'm excited to watch. I'm definitely excited to watch New Mexico against Michigan, right? I want to see the Michigan offense second year under the new head coach. And I definitely want to see, because a lot of people didn't expect Bryce Underwood to win the quarterback competition, especially with them bringing in King from Fresno State. But this young man obviously has shown himself to be a leader. And it's funny because to start, CJ Carr gets to start. I would say CJ Carr was pretty much as a prep star in his shadow in the state of Michigan. He probably was like the second best guy right behind Bryce.
Yeah. And they played each other.
Yeah.
Bryce ended CJ's career. Now, Belleville, with all due respect to
better team,
those kids at Saline, yes. Yeah.
Better team. But with that being said, for them to both have their first career start, for both of them to have their first career start this weekend, that's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. But I'm intrigued by the Michigan offense and what they've added via the transfer portal. I went back and watched that Michigan game. You remember the Michigan State game that they lost at Michigan State when they had the big lead, when Mel Tucker was there. They had the big lead. Okay, yeah. They had Sarah Steele at receiver. They had Anthony Kidd that transferred to Oklahoma at receiver. They had a promising young group of wide receivers. And then all of a sudden, it just evaporated like that. So I'm excited to see, what they can do, what their receivers look like, especially with this young. The offensive line, I think, is going to be much better than last year under Sharon Moore. He was the O-line coach and the offensive coordinator. So that's his forte. And I'm interested. That game intrigues me because you can pretty much guess that Underwood's going to be one of the kids that I'm excited to watch play.
Sure.
When we get to those kids. The next game I have is Auburn Baylor.
Well, I want to just quickly about that game too, Shaun. This is going to be interesting because it's going to be our first chance to see if the Michigan offense is going to be better. There's this assumption, there's this talking point out there, and I'm actually sympathetic to it, where it doesn't matter who starts at quarterback for them. It's going to be way better than what they had last year. And the thinking being, if they won 8 games last year with that quarterback talent, what are they going to do with this quarterback talent? And while I'm sympathetic to that, I don't think enough people are commenting on the fact that they don't have the same overall talent around the quarterback as they had even last year. The O-line's not as good, in my opinion, or at least I don't think it could. It needs to prove that it can be as good. They lost a lot. There's no Colson Loveland. I know they didn't have him against Ohio State or Alabama, but again, they won those games scoring in the teens. You're not going to regularly do that. And I look at that receiving court, I'm like, I don't know. But I also love the running back room with Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. So I'm intrigued by, just forget I'm a Notre Dame fan. I hate Michigan. Just forget that. As a college football analyst, that's an interesting storyline to see. What does the town around Bryce Underwood look like? Or are they going to ask him to be Superman as a true freshman, which could not only result in some downs this year, but what does that do to his sight? We've seen this before, Shaun, where a freshman gets so much put on him that he never really recovers from that level of pressure or hero ball. I think of Ronald Curry at North Carolina. Went to a really bad team because he was convinced that he was a basketball player and just got beat around for a couple of years, and they just never recovered from that. Now, he ended up playing the NFL for a long time as a wide receiver, but as a quarterback, he never recovered. And I'll still say this, that's the best high school quarterback I've ever seen, and there isn't a close second. So, that's an interesting aspect of this is the town around him good enough for him to thrive? And they also lost some really important parts of that defense. So I just think this notion that you've got the same team as last year, you're just plugging in a better quarterback, could potentially be misguided, or they could be spot on, and this is going to be a Michigan team that people have to contend with. And I think this is our first crack at it.
Yep.
Trev yesterday said one of his bets he likes this week is the spread in that game. And let me look up what it is, because it was let me see here. Let me go to week 1. Let's go to Michigan's in the top 25, right? So that would be a top 25 game. Let me go here real quick. So let's go Michigan. And so Michigan is they're a 34.5 point favorite over New Mexico, which in the point that Trev made when he was looking at that FanDuel odds, he's like, look, Michigan only scored over 30 points once last season. And that was 50 points against Northwestern. And then they scored over 30. They scored 30 against Fresno, and then it was 28, 27, 27, 24. And then, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of their 13 games, they scored less than 20 points. So that was a very interesting one.
And that spread with that low of an over-under on the total?
Yeah. So basically saying New Mexico's not going to score much.
Basically.
But even the over-under at 49.5, that means that you're thinking that they're going to get – New Mexico could get into the double digits. So you're thinking they're going to score – they're going to score, They're
basically saying the game is going to be 38-3.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, I mean, it's it's very interesting, man. I'm looking to see that. But that's another interesting aspect to this Michigan game, in my opinion. What else you got, Shaun?
Auburn Baylor. 2 programs
tonight.
I think. Yes.
Tonight.
That game for me, this Auburn buzz it's almost at some other programs that I won't mention when it comes to how the fan bases feel about their teams. But this Auburn game, I actually like Baylor. You love the quarterback. down there.
Well, I just love their offense. I just think
Yeah.
he's a nice college quarterback that just knows
Yeah.
how to run that system, but he's got really good weapons around him. Like LSU had a lot of problems with this Baylor offense in the bowl game last year. The problem is Baylor's defense had even more problems with LSU's offense.
Yeah.
Like they were putting in work against LSU last year in the bowl game.
And I'm interested because of the freshman quarterback in waiting. I definitely want to see Jackson Arnold. I do. I want to see Jackson Arnold, how he performed in this offense. Is he better suited for this offense than he was at Oklahoma? Those are the things that intrigue me. I do think he'd have better skill position players at the wide receiver position this season at Auburn. They had a lot of injuries at wide receiver last year at Oklahoma. So it was pretty much whatever the run game could give them, and that was it. So Auburn Baylor intrigues me. I'm excited to watch that game tonight. I really am. Because I pretty much know
big game for the Big 12, Shaun.
It is.
Like it's a big game. They almost got a big one last night with Cincinnati. Almost like if they could have gone down there and knocked off Nebraska, that would have been a big one. But there's a couple games this weekend and opening weekend, Shaun, where I think the Big 12 has a chance to make a statement. There's 2 tonight with Colorado hosting Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's a hot team in the ACC. I think Georgia Tech's going to smack them personally. But if Colorado can say, hey, man, we weren't just the Shador Travis Hunter show. We got a program we're building here. And if they can beat Georgia Tech tonight, and if Baylor can beat Auburn tonight, all of a sudden the Big 12 is like, hey, man, a team that we had to went sub 500 in the league last year almost beat Nebraska. And then you've got TCU playing at North Carolina on Monday night. Shaun, there's a lot of opportunities for the Big 12, and then you got Utah playing against UCLA. There's a big chance for the Big 12 to make a statement. Well, they're going to make a statement this weekend, Shaun. It's just, is it going to be a positive one or a negative one? That's really the question.
You just hit on my next game. Utah, UCLA. Can Utah return to the Utah that we expected when they were in the Pac-12, when they pretty much gave everybody fits because of their style of play? Can Kyle Whittingham get the program back to the Utes that we all know and love? Defense, running the ball, veteran quarterback play. I think that was really the downfall of the program when they had the injuries at quarterback and they had to go with youngsters, and the quarterback play was just inconsistent. But for me, Nico Iamaleava going to UCLA, being the quarterback, like, of course that's intriguing, man. Of course. Yes. That's the story. That's the narrative. He doesn't have much around him. Deshaun Foster, his second season as the head coach out there, alum, big-time player for UCLA. It's a lot of good storylines surrounding this game, Utah and UCLA. So I'm definitely intrigued to watch this one.
Well, and it's a new era at Utah. They're bringing in a brand new offensive system. They went and hired the guy from New Mexico. And I'll tell you, Shaun, if y'all have not watched Devin Dampier yet, watch that game on Saturday night. That's a late kickoff, right, Shaun? Isn't that like a 10 or 11 o'clock kickoff on? Let me go down here and find that game.
I believe so.
Yeah, it's an 11 o'clock kickoff on Fox. So it'll be after all the other games. Y'all, I'm telling you, I know we're all going to have a long day tomorrow. Ohio State, Texas is at noon. And there's games all day. Get rest tonight. I'm telling y'all, you're going to want to watch Utah tomorrow night to watch Devin Dampier, Shaun. I cannot wait to see what that kid is made of. And, of course, you know me, I'm going to be watching, see if Tobias can do something tonight or tomorrow night with Utah. But I'm really looking forward to this kid because, like, there's a few quarterbacks that like him, John Mateer, who followed their OCs to their new school. So even though that they're new to the school, they're actually the ones that know the system and kind of can help get everybody else situated for that. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing this Utah game. I like that you picked that one, Shaun. And then, of course, the other storyline on the other side of the ball, like you mentioned with Nico, is this going – like I think I'll say this. Deshaun Foster is betting his career on Nico being the right guy at quarterback. And that family. He's betting his career on that family because part of getting Nico was they went and got his brother back who decommitted from them right before signing day to sign with Arkansas. They took him back. So I'm like, dude, you just sold your soul to get that family quarterback, and it's either going to save your program because Nico's going to be what people think he is, or it's going to end your tenure as the head coach. I think that's a big moment. And we're going to get a chance to see what it looks like tonight. I'll be watching tomorrow night. I'll also be looking to see what Rico Flores does. I hope he's healthy. He was playing really well last year before he got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see how Rico plays in that game as well. So it's going to be a very intriguing game. And another opportunity for the Big 12, as we talked about. Go ahead.
Absolutely. That seems to be the theme. Big 12, show us what you got.
Yeah, that's right.
Show us what you got.
That's right.
My last one, of course. Hey, you have to. Oh, every Notre Dame fan is going to be rooting for Syracuse against Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I don't know a Notre Dame fan, if you are not rooting for Steve Angeli against Tennessee, I don't know what you're doing. Syracuse is going to be rocking. I'm hoping for the upset. I want Steve to put on a show and put the SEC in that place. Give Tennessee one of those L's that kicks them out of the playoff conversation early in the season, especially with the schedule they have. I'm all on this game. Excited to watch Tennessee go up against Syracuse.
Well, Shaun, this is going to be a game that Notre Dame fans should have a very keen interest in, even if Steve Angeli is not the quarterback at Notre Dame, or was a former quarterback at Notre Dame who's there. Tennessee on FanDuel is a 13.5-point favorite. The over-under is 51.5. That shocked me. When you look at what these two offenses have been in the past couple of years, and I mean 51. So they're thinking this game is going to be something like 34-17, something like that. They must think that Tennessee defense is going to be pretty good this year, or that Syracuse is going to take a step back. But this is big for Notre Dame fans, even if Steve wasn't there, because if Syracuse can pull off an upset in Atlanta over Tennessee, that then bodes well for Notre Dame's strength of schedule down the road also. When you throw in the Steve Angeli element into it, it's great for the kid. Look, I have never had any beef with Steve Angeli. My whole point was he's just not, in my opinion, an elite quarterback. And in my opinion, he's just not as good as what CJ and Kenny were. He just, in my opinion, isn't. But what do we say all summer, Shaun, and all spring, I should say, and all winter? All three of those kids are Power 4 starting quarterbacks. It's just Notre Dame needs something a little bit higher. I'd love it if Steve went down to Tennessee and got that win, because it's great for him. It's great for Notre Dame's resume. The other part of it, too, is it's great for Notre Dame recruiting at quarterback. It's like, listen, man, you come here. Gino developed this kid for 3 years. Didn't work out. He got beat out, but he was ready to go to Syracuse and ball. And a lot of that was because of the development he got here at Notre Dame. I think that's a great selling point for Notre Dame on the recruiting trail as well. Great selling point.
All right, you ready to get to these big games?
Yes, let's.
Right.
I thought you were going to go to players. I was like, we're going to talk about these big games, so let's do it, Shaun. Well, can I mention a couple games that I'm also interested in that aren't part of them? When you talked about some of them, you talked about Auburn-Baylor. I thought that was a really good one. I'm very curious to see how Auburn-Baylor goes. Same thing with Georgia Tech and Colorado. I kind of got my eye a little bit on that one. Yeah, I want to see how that game plays out. But just a couple other matchups that I'm also interested in, Shaun. That TCU North Carolina matchup on Monday night. Obviously the Bill Belichick era begins. I want to see if I picked TCU to be in the Big 12 title game. I just have a feeling this is going to be a year. He's got a veteran quarterback. I love Josh Hoover. He's a gamer. He just knows how to run that system, gets that ball out really quick. I like watching that team play. And again, it's another opportunity for the Big 12 to make a statement, or for the ACC to make a statement. So I'm very curious to see how that kind of plays out. So that's a game that I have my eye on. And then you want to talk about a game of two quarterbacks that just have a lot in common. The Kyron Drones, Lenore Sellers, Tech, South Carolina game on Sunday night or Sunday afternoon is another one, Shaun, that it intrigues me. I expect South Carolina to win, but this is one of those, hey, Virginia Tech, show us who you are moments. I think their head coach is, at the very least, he's on a warm seat, Shaun. I don't know if he's necessarily on a hot seat yet, but he's definitely on the warm seat. And on top of that, we have talked mostly about the Big 12 in this game, but it's an opportunity for the ACC. They have a couple chances to make statements in this weekend as well, Shaun. And that's certainly those two that I looked at, North Carolina, TCU, and then Virginia Tech, South Carolina, where you're like, now that's the ACC's opportunity to make a statement that goes beyond just Clemson beating LSU if that were to happen. This is going to be a big weekend for those teams as well. So those are just a couple other games that I kind of have on my radar, Shaun. If we're talking about just actually intriguing games, those are two. And here's one that just popped in my head just now. After watching a lot of Big Ten teams play last night, I'm now very much looking forward to seeing Northwestern at Tulane, because Big Ten did not have a good – I mean, they won, but they did not – they all played down to the level there. I mean, it was – Minnesota-Buffalo was 13-10 in the fourth quarter of the game last night. Wisconsin was 10-0 against Miami of Ohio. Their defense was balling, but their offense was terrible.
Granted, their starting quarterback got injured.
And they weren't doing a whole lot even before.
That's true.
That.
That's true.
You know,
yeah.
But yeah, Billy Edwards went down last night, but it's still Miami of Ohio. You know, I mean, like a little bit more than 10-0. I thought.
I'm sorry, I still don't see it when it comes to Dylan Raiola. I mean, good, solid, but.
Did you see Mike Renner's tweet this morning? Mike Renner tweeted out, it's a Notre Dame grad, used to work at PFF. I'm not sure what he's doing now, but he said, I can't get enough Dylan Raiola. He goes, he was showing Dylan Raiola coming out of the locker room doing like the dance that Patrick Mahomes does or whatever, like the jump with his arms. And he's like, this is Daniel Day-Lewis level method acting. Like the desire he has to be Patrick Mahomes is just kind of odd. Like it's not even like I mimicked my game after John Elway. I was a big John Elway fan, but like I never even considered, should I cut my hair like John Elway cut it? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird, to be honest with you. But Nebraska barely beating Cincinnati. Rutgers needing a fourth down stand to beat Ohio, who they were killing early, and then they let them roar all. It was not. I tweeted out I was going to jump on Twitter last night and start making fun of how the Big Ten played against the MAC, and then I was like, yeah, that probably wouldn't be a good idea for me to do because at least they all still won against the MAC team. But yeah, they struggled. They struggled last night, man. The Big Ten, they just didn't look great. Now I'm like, is Tulane about to catch a dub over Northwestern after what we saw last night? It's going to be interesting. That's one that I got my eye on. And I like their coach too. I think John Sumrall, he's a guy to keep an eye on for, one of those G5 coaches that could be making a jump up to the Power 4 level here soon.
Northwestern has a lot of buzz in the Chicagoland area too.
Yeah,
they do.
Is their stadium opening this year?
Yes, I believe at some point, if I'm not mistaken.
I actually want to go to a game there.
It is like it's supposed to be.
The pictures look amazing. The pictures look amazing.
Yeah.
They really do.
And I love them limiting the maximum capacity as well. Like they could have gone, they said they could have gone 10 to 15,000 more seats, but they purposely made it smaller. And it's going to be a great atmosphere. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's really going to be a great atmosphere. But I think that team,
that was a smart decision, by the way.
Yeah.
To go smaller.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited, man. Can I talk about this Texas Ohio State matchup, bro? Can I get to it? Let me tell you something. I'm gonna have my hot wings at about 11 o'clock. I'm gonna make my order at like 10 in the morning, and I'll be ready to go. This Arch Manning, of course, the biggest storyline. Julian Sain on the other side. Is there anyone surrounded with better weapons outside of CJ Carr as a first-time starter other than Julian Sain?
The only other person in the conversation is Arch Manning.
Probably.
Because I still count Arch as a first-time starter. Coming off the bench for an injured guy is different than you're the guy. Yeah.
So I'm excited to see this, right? I'm excited to see I have two players defensively on both teams that made my players I want to see list. That's another reason. I'm excited to see players on both teams on the defensive side of the ball. I'm excited to see both of these top national title contender teams going at it right out the gate. And two great offensive minds, and Ryan Day and Sark. the adjustments. I'm excited to see what Ohio State can do with the new coordinators. I'm just excited, man. I'm excited about this game. There's so many storylines, so many narratives. Can Texas? They went to Michigan. It would have been different if Harbaugh had still been. I think they expected Harbaugh to still be in Michigan. That would have been an even bigger win for Texas last year. But with Harbaugh's departure, I don't think it had the same impact. Now, going up to the horseshoe, if Sark can get this win, it says something, but it still doesn't answer the question about toughness once they hit the tough teams.
Because they've won a game like this before.
Yes.
They beat Alabama on the road 2 years ago. Right.
Yes. So this will still need to be answered. That Georgia obstacle is still in their way. They can say what they want to say. Well, we got to the semifinals back-to-back years, but every time you run up against a physical team, you punk out. You had a chance right there on the doorstep to tie the game up against a physical team in Ohio State, and you punked out with the play calling. So they still have some things to prove. They still have a lot to answer. And I want to see it tomorrow. I want to see if Ohio State can try to punk them. Because I think Ohio State, even though they don't have the same, Kenyatta Jackson's another kid. He's not on my list, but I'm interested in watching Kenyatta Jackson coming off
that
the edge for Ohio State.
As a whole is a big one for me.
They've recruited well.
Right. It's like they lost their entire starting lineup. And how quickly can they reload? Like, reloading doesn't always happen, even at programs like Notre Dame, Ohio State, Bama. It doesn't always happen in game one. You know, like they're going to be fine by the time they get to Michigan, barring like Notre Dame level of injuries, their D-line's going to be fine. My question is more of how are they going to be in this particular game? Like, people don't understand that, Shaun, when you have these conversations. Like, oh, they're going to be, by the end of the year, I'll bet you so-and-so has 1,000 yards. I'm like, probably will, but what does that have to do with what I'm talking about in game one? You know, that's where I'm saying, are you going to be ready in game one? Miami's secondary could end up being elite, but are they going to be that in game one? That's kind of my question. Miami's receiving core, I think, is going to be fine in 2025. Eventually, will it be that way in game one? And there's parts of Notre Dame that we could talk about that. You know, I think Notre Dame's receiving core is going to end up being really, really good. Will it be that way in game one? With half the rotation is new. Those are questions that we want to see. This Ohio State defensive line is really the big question for me, because secondary linebacker, it's replacing a piece. You know, like you lost Denzel Burke, you replaced him with Jermaine Matthews. You've already done that before. Denzel Burke was hurt part of last year, and I would argue in the postseason, I thought Jermaine played better than Denzel. I mean, like, he did. I thought he did. I think they're going to be fine there. Linebacker, losing Cody Simon, you're losing a really good player, NFL draft pick, leader of your defense, but you replace him with Arvell Reese, who played a lot of football last year. Like, you're just plugging him in beside Sonny Styles. Defensive line's different, Shaun, because they're all new. And not everybody that they're counting on played a ton of football last year. There's a lot of them that did. And so that's what I'm curious to see, because that ultimately could be what decides Ohio State's future in 2025 as whether or not they have any chance of repeating or making another run is going to be their D-line. I'm not saying it's going to be good or bad or what. I'm just saying I'm looking forward to seeing it. How quickly do they reload? Because if you say, well, they don't really get to where they need to get to until October, well, there might be a couple L's on your docket by then if it takes you that long. Or if they're like game one, you're like, yep, they're just plugging and playing. Is the Buckeyes, then I think they win this game. That's really the hope that Texas has, is that Ohio State's defensive line needs time to develop. Because if they come out in game one just roaring against a remade Texas offensive line that wasn't even that great last year, that's how you neutralize Arch. And ultimately, we can talk about the quarterbacks and the skill players. Ultimately, that's where this game is going to get decided, is in the trenches. To your point, Texas whoops Georgia last year in a 7-on-7. Would have whooped them. Like, not competitive in a 7-on-7. Texas would have smoked Georgia in a 7-on-7. But unfortunately for Texas, they still make you put pads on. They still make you play with linemen, and they still make you tackle. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Sark, here's the thing, Shaun. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this game feels like 2020 when Oregon went up to Ohio State.
21.
Was that 21? CJ.
21. CJ's
21. Sorry, CJ's first year, his first start, and you could just see Ohio State was going to be a really good team, but to face a team like that early on, it's like they weren't there yet. And so Ohio State's going to be a contender. They're going to be a good team. I just don't know. Texas has a lot coming back offensively, right?
Yeah.
A lot of weapons. And then defensively, like you said, I think Archer said they lost a fair amount of starters as well defensively, right?
Yep.
But like I said, there are defensive players on both sides of the ball in this matchup that are on my players to watch list. So
here's another interesting. Go ahead, Shaun. Sorry.
Go ahead. No,
here's something that speaks to your original point. I do think Sark recognized what happened to his team against Georgia and Ohio State last year. That's why he did what he did in the portal. Got the big guys that he got. Brought on. It wasn't just that they were losing defensive tackles. If you look at the type of defensive tackles that they went out and got, they're not playmakers. They're not guys that had a bunch of sacks last year, like the guy that they got from North Carolina. Actually, I always get it confused. Did he come from North Carolina first, or he came from Kentucky, right? Travis Shaw. He was at Kentucky. No, he's North Carolina. Who's the kid that was also at Kentucky? I forget which one that was. It might not even be there, but there was a kid that transferred. Keyshawn Silvers will transfer somewhere else. I'm sorry, I got that one wrong. But you got Travis Shaw, who's 6'5", 340 from North Carolina. He had 12 tackles or 4 tackles for loss last season, no sacks, 26 tackles. You're not bringing him in there to beat Jerry Tillery. They went out and got Cole Brevard from Purdue, who had 5.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks last year at Purdue. He's 6'3", 346. You now got Murad Watson from Syracuse last year, who had a whopping 1.5 tackles for loss and 1 sack last year. He's 6'3", 327. Like, you remove Trey Moore from end to will linebacker. Why? I think he's a smart coach. He said that we got our butts kicked, and we can't let that happen again. So we got to recruit to fix it, and then move some guys around to fix it. So I do think there was an awareness from Coach Sarkisian that those issues were there, and he's attempting to fix it. And we're going to see if the attempts to fix it worked or not. Or is this a Lincoln Riley problem where the players aren't really the problem? You had pretty good D tackles last year, and the defensive coordinator's not the problem. You had a top 5 ranked defense. Your offensive line coach isn't the problem. You have one of the best offensive line coaches in the country. So what's the problem? Maybe it's a mindset, a mentality of how you prepare on a daily basis where you're not doing things that bring out that toughness and how you prepare. Like, that's something that we're going to learn this year. Or did part of his adjustments also incorporate, we got to prepare differently. We got to be more physical during the week if we want to be more physical on Saturday. Like, that's something that's fascinating for me about this game, is to see if Sark, because if he does, that's where Texas wins this game. If Texas goes into Columbus and wins this game the way that I think is possible, that's where I'm going to be like, okay, now I'm a believer in Texas. They went out there and ran it on Ohio State. They were physical at the point of attack against the Ohio State offensive line. Those portal pickups are now their tackle, just eating up space. And then Colin Simmons is just doing his thing at end. Okay, now they're a problem now. Like,
you know what's so amazing, bro? They closed Clemson out running the ball. Got the big runs, close Clemson out, and then go to Ohio State and just all of a sudden just abandon it against Ohio State when they needed it the most. Mm-hmm. It is just, I don't know if that's really, you just lay that at the feet of Sark because of his style of play calling. Like, at some point, you just have to say, look, we're about to line up and move you off the ball. and get these 2 or 3 yards. That's what you went to against Clemson, but for some reason, when it got to Ohio State, you didn't have the kahunas, I guess, to believe in you guys to go get that yard. And I think that's something in winning programs, you have to have that. You have to have that on the inside of you. I think that's something that Chip Kelly brought to Ohio State last year from a play calling standpoint. Like, look, we're not always just going to go and just throw it around the field to find an answer. Like, we're going to establish this run. We're going to run this rock. And we can always get to the other stuff, but we're going to run this rock, And that seems to be something that all good programs have in their back pocket.
24 hours from now, we're going to have our answer, Shaun. Game will be over 24 hours from now. We're going to have our answer.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's another one, Shaun. There's another big game. That's how big this game is, that it overshadows, and I said this yesterday, it overshadows two other games that would otherwise just be the monster games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Notre Dame, obviously Miami, 6-10, which we've talked about. But this Clemson-LSU matchup, if it wasn't for Ohio State, Texas would be getting a lot more discussion as well. I know you have a very interested eye on this one as well, Shaun.
I do, because I think Sark, Marcus Freeman, Brian Kelly do all have something in common. I think they all have a lot to prove this year in different ways as head coaches, different boxes to check, different hurdles to jump. And I'm very interested in seeing Brian Kelly and how he responds to, not necessarily, because we've seen Brian Kelly rest on his laurels, right? And he had things at Notre Dame that he could use and prop up as excuses that most people would say, yeah, you're right. You don't have that at LSU. You just don't. So now it's show and prove. It's show and prove. Like, you face Clemson. You know what it's like to go up against Dabo.
You've coached in that stadium.
You've coached in that stadium. So this is on you. Year 4. What is this program like now? You figured out the issues in the secondary. Okay, we figured that out. The quarterback situation. You got a veteran quarterback. Trying to find a running back. You finally found your running backs towards the end of the year, last year. They lose a lot on that offensive line. A lot. Can you replace that? How have you recruited the offensive line? And wide receivers, you ought to. It's LSU. Once again, they have a batch of wide receivers that are talented. NFL talent. So,
Shaun, that's been one of the most hilarious narratives this offseason. Is like, oh, they're going to be better because look at all the portal receivers they got. I'm like, when was receiver their problem? Like, what? Huh? What do we talk? That's like saying, oh, Texas is going to be good this year because they got young, talented receivers. That wasn't their problem last year. They had really good receivers last year too. Like, well, when did that all of a sudden become like, boy, I'm glad they upgraded at receiver? Was that their problem? I don't think that it was. But it is funny to hear that. But they do have a good receiving core, and it's fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are no excuses for Brian Kelly. Just none. This team should contend for the SEC. It should be in contention for the playoffs. And he should be able to remedy the issues that have been there. Clemson's going to be good, man. Clemson's going to be a good team. I just really believe Clemson's going to be a really good team this year. I just really do. Because first of all, Dabo's a heck of a ball coach. He just is. He's a heck of a ball coach. And he weathered the storm. He believed in his system. He went out, he recruited, they developed, and they allowed their quarterback to develop. They stayed with him. They didn't jump into the portal when he was struggling. They said, this is our guy. We're going to rock with him. And then they had the foresight to say, you know what? We need to switch out what we've done in recruiting at wide receiver. We need to get more explosive. And they have hit. And then the wide receiving group they're bringing in the 26th class is the next quarterback is going to have a batch of receivers to throw to. So I just love how they adjusted. how they shifted as a program. Tough time losing his assistants. He had a tough time, but he was still able to win to a certain degree, just not at the level that they were used to. And now I think they have a chance this year to kind of like get back to that level of being an elite program and being a true national title contending program. So this is where Dabo still has to prove that he can reestablish himself back to that level. Brian Kelly is trying to reestablish that, I was the right guy to bring here to LSU. And so that storyline, along with just both teams have really good defenses on both sides and two really good senior veteran quarterbacks playing with talent at the wide receiver position. So I can see this game being a defensive battle. I can see this game having a lot of points. I really can, just because of offensive talent in the quarterbacks. So I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm taking Texas in the first game, and and it's not spite towards the coach. I'm taking Clemson. I think Clemson is.
Do you think it's going to be a close game, or do you think Clemson wins convincingly? Because I do think it's going to be a close game. Because I think LSU, if they can protect Garrett Nussmeier, I think it's a close game that LSU can win. That's going to be the key. Now that may not be as easy as what you think it should be. If they can protect him, because I don't love the Clemson secondary outside of Avian Terrell. I don't. And I do think this is a very good LSU receiving core. Yeah. It's all going to come down to, can you protect the quarterback or not? It really is.
And that's a heck of a front four for Clemson.
Yeah. And is Tom Allen going to know how to use it, which is something the last D coordinator didn't know how to do. That's it. So I'm very curious how that goes. I think this is a huge game for Brian Kelly. Just forget our personal feelings about Brian Kelly. Just looking as a football coach, you're getting to that point in time where it's kind of like, if it's now or never. Like, it was hilarious. I haven't watched the Brian press conference since last season, but my buddy D. Trollhunter sent me the Brian Kelly's intro press conference for LSU for Clemson game. And it was funny. And as soon as I started watching, I was like, how long is it going to take him to remind people how long he's been coaching? It was within the first 5 minutes, and it just was hilarious listening to that. And it's like, but from looking at it from a serious standpoint, when you've been coaching as long as he has, and you're at a program like LSU, if you don't do it within the first 3 or 4 years, you have to wonder, is he going to take it over the hump? And when I mean do it, I'm not setting this arbitrary. If he doesn't win a title in 2025, he'll never win one. I've already said I don't think he's going to win a title. What I'm saying is, if they're going to be an elite program in the SEC, something they have not been in his tenure, the closest they came was winning the down SEC West in his first year, and then they got annihilated by Georgia in the SEC title game. And then that same year, they got annihilated at home by Tennessee. And then, of course, with Jaden Daniels, they went 10-3 with one of the best offenses the last 30 years. And then last year, obviously 9-4. I'm not saying like this is a win a Tyler bust year. What I'm saying is, if they don't make a jump where at the end of the year they're like a legit, okay, they may not be able to win it, but this is without a doubt the best team that Brian Kelly's had, then I have to say I just don't think he's going to do it at LSU. Not talking about winning the title. I'm talking about making them a legitimate, because they were not a contender last year, Shaun. That was evident by the end of the first game literally by the end of the first game of each of the last 2 years, you're just like, well, check them off. They're not going to contend, because you're like, yeah, Jaden Daniels is really good. And he's got great receivers, but that defense isn't going to make it through the SEC holding people under 40 points. Like, that's just like you knew by the end of the first game. I think if they win this game, I think this is the kind of big win they need to give that. There's a lack of there's a lot of false enthusiasm in sports, right, Shaun? I mean, you go play a game of 3-on-3, all 6 of those guys are talking like they got confidence, but not all of them do. There's a lot of teams that think that say they're going to be really good, but as soon as they get punched in the mouth or something doesn't go their way, their true feelings come out. But you go win a game like this, and then it cements and solidifies that feeling you have, even if it may have been false going in, it now becomes reality. And I think that's what this game can be for LSU, where if they go in and win this game in a game where they actually play well to win, not a game where Clemson just lays an egg and just like fumbles the ball like Navy did against Notre Dame last year. It wasn't even LSU doing anything. They're just dropping it, just Clemson's like just not good. If LSU goes in there and beats Clemson, not wins, but beats Clemson, I will then say, okay, this is a team that's going to be a force to reckon with, because what it'll mean is their offensive line is better than expected, and it means their defense has taken a nice year 2 jump under Coach Baker. If those two things are true, then I do think this LSU team can be dangerous, because they did upgrade their secondary. They have very talented linebackers. I love their running back, Caden Durham. They do have a lot of speed at wide receiver, and Garrett Nussmeier's got a big arm.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do win that game, you're going to watch me say, like, this is going to be a team to watch during the season. Now, let's hope that Brian Kelly, if you're an LSU fan, cannot have his typical "we didn't show up these 2 or 3 weeks" games, like he tends to have. But you go on the road to beat Clemson, that's a statement win. That's not in Brian Kelly's DNA. Yeah. All his big wins that I can think of at LSU have all been at home. Beat Alabama, it was at home. Like, this would be big for Clemson or for LSU. I have Clemson winning, but that's what I think is at stake for them. And I think it's a big game for Clemson too, Shaun, because they're a team getting a lot of hype right now. But I kind of feel the same way about them as a team as I do about LSU. Are they as confident as themselves as people are in them? They didn't play like a confident team when they played anybody good last year. Did they look confident to you when they were getting their butts kicked at home by Louisville? Or in the fourth quarter against South Carolina, where you watch Lenore Sellers play, like, this kid thinks he's going to win this football game. You watch Clemson play, and they're like, I hope we win this football game. It was very different demeanor in those last couple minutes of that game. Georgia
got
game.
Tight. Hey, once SMU stopped turning the ball over, they started playing tight. Yep. So.
Yep. That's a team that has a lot to prove to me. These are 2 teams getting a lot of preseason top 10 hype that have a lot to prove, in my opinion, and I can't wait to see this. Shaun, let's wrap up with some players and some other matchups that you're looking to see this weekend. Shaun.
I had it on. Sorry about that. I had it muted. I'm excited to see Dante Moore for obvious reasons. Long-time recruit by Notre Dame. Thought he was going to be the quarterback for Notre Dame, possibly starting this game in Miami, and he's out at Oregon. The reason I'm intrigued is because the quarterbacks that go to Oregon end up playing very efficient football at Oregon. I'm intrigued because that's not necessarily the type of quarterback. Dante wasn't a Bo Nix type. He wasn't a Dylan Gabriel type. He was viewed with more upside, better arm talent, big plays.
Not the runner.
I want to see who he becomes. I want to see if he can become that efficient quarterback that Oregon is used to. Bryce Underwood, of course, is somebody I'm intrigued to watch. Can't wait to watch that young man play. The hype, can he live up to it? I already talked about the connection to CJ Carr, the rivals they were in high school in Michigan. And then I'm excited to watch. You already talked about Matthews and Devin Sanchez. I want to watch these cornerbacks for Ohio State go up against these wide receivers, man. Trey Wingo and the rest of the crew. This is going to be fantastic to watch.
And the other side too, Shaun, Malik Muhammad against, in that new look secondary against Jeremiah Smith and Cardinell Tate and Brandon Ennis. I love that Brandon Ennis was named the captain for that team.
That says a lot. That says a lot.
He's a junior. He's a true junior, by the way. Not a red shirt. He's a true junior. That says a whole lot about the offseason he's had. Yeah. Dude, this is going to be one of the top 5 unit matchups of the season. Is really the receivers against the DBs on both sides. Yeah, but I don't think that Ohio State's secondary is getting the assumption that they're going to be great like the Texas secondary is. So to your point, Ohio State has a chance to say, "Hey, y'all dismissed us a little too soon, because look what we're about to do." Yeah. They have that shot.
Yeah, they do. Now, look, I understand that I'm going to combine these 2 guys, right? Because they were 5 stars. Everybody thought they were going to be great. I saw one shine when he got the opportunity. He flashed in the semifinals. Colin Simmons, I can't wait to see this kid a year in the weight room. Like, this kid is all world. From what I saw in that Ohio State game, he was he was coming in third down and passing situations, and he was able to apply pressure. You saw the quickness, you saw the quick twitch. I can't wait to see him, but I'm going to combine him because I can't wait to see Dylan Stewart for South Carolina as well. Those are two young defenders. I can't wait to see who they become in their sophomore years. Lenore Sellers is one thing, but I want to see that big boy.
That's going to determine, like, those guys like that are going to determine how good South Carolina is this year. Shaun, we did our SEC preview. Trev and I did a week or two ago. And I said the battle for Defensive Player of the Year in the SEC, in my opinion, is going to come down to Colin Simmons and Dylan Stewart. And I can't wait to watch it. And this week is going to be the first chance for both of them. You know, you're going to have, Dylan Stewart chasing around Kyron Drones. That is not an easy task. When Kyron Drones is on, he looks a lot like Byron Brown did last night for South Florida. By the way, we should probably talk for a second about that game. That was a weird game last night. But I can't wait to see. You nailed Colin Simmons and Dylan Stewart, dude. I cannot wait to watch these two kids play because I think they're going to be the most dominant forces on defense in the SEC. With all due respect to Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks and Malik Muhammad and some of the other great players in the league on defense, and I could list a bunch of them, I think those two kids are the ones two I'm most excited about in the SEC this year.
Yeah, and then I had some mentions like the Clemson D line, Harold Perkins you talked about. I want to see, if he's going to take that next step and meet expectations equal to what he did his freshman year. But I think someone that is vitally important, DeCorian Moore at Oregon.
Yeah.
Especially with the loss that they have at wide receiver.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's going to be a guy that Dante Moore is probably going to be zeroed in on early and often in this season. Has to. Absolutely. And like I said, big-time player, huge expectations. I want to see if he's able to live up to it. Those are kind of like, people have been throwing out DJ Lagway. I've seen enough. DJ Lagway physically.
I just don't know if he's going to be healthy.
Yes. I physically saw enough last year from him to know if he's healthy, he's going to be fine. I thought about Ty Simpson down there, just like, okay, who is he going to be? OC is back with the head coach. That combination for him to hold off the talent he had behind him at the quarterback position says a lot. So let's see what he does with that talented skill position players he has at his disposal. There's a lot I thought about Caden Salter replacing Shador out there at Colorado, beating Juju out. It's just
Shaun,
players
that's really, in my opinion, one of the biggest storylines of week one is
I can see that.
So many interesting storylines at quarterback and like guys taking over new eras, but then also those like a Dante Moore, we're talking about him. Well, what if he doesn't play well? And Austin Novosad is sitting back there. What if how quickly, how many bad plays will Caden Salter have to make before they're ready to turn it over to Julian Lewis? That's another part of this thing too, is there's a lot of these quarterback battles where it's like, okay, you had another guy in this, what happens to you? But like, there's a changing of the guard at quarterback. And this weekend's our first chance to really see a lot of them. We saw a little bit of it last night. Drake Lindsey's a guy that I'm really high on at Minnesota. And he had some throws last night. You were like, that's what I'm talking about. And then he had some throws. You're like, yeah, he's still a young guy that's learning. CJ Bailey last night for NC State. Love CJ Bailey. First half, he was exactly what I thought he was going to be. Second half, it didn't look so great, as a team. But, you talk about Caden Salter, watching him go toe-to-toe. He's not a new guy, but, look, he's him and Haynes King. How's that battle going to be? He's new to the Power 4 level. Very curious to see what kind of jump Aiden Childs makes at Michigan State. That's something I'm very interested in. We talked about the Auburn and Baylor quarterback situation, but there's so many of these things we talked about, Shaun. We talked about Texas and Ohio State are a new era. Steve Angeli and Joey Aguilar, new faces at new places at Syracuse and Tennessee. There's just so many of Ryan Brown, who's a transfer to Purdue, which, by the way, it drives me nuts when they're like, North Carolina. I'm like, he played at Purdue last year. He transferred to North Carolina for the spring, went back to Purdue. He's not a North Carolina transfer. He was on Purdue's team last year, whatever. But I'm very excited to see him in this new system. I really am. You know, what are we going to see from Eli Holstein in year 2 there? Who wins the quarterback job at Boston College? I haven't checked to see who's going to win that job. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them play. You know, is there going to be a battle there? How's Francisco Mendoza going to look running this Kurt Cignetti offense against Old Dominion this weekend? What's Miller Moss look like in this new system? So Gunnar Stockton plays a scrappy Marshall team this weekend. There's so many of these quarterback storylines on top of the ones, you know, that you mentioned, Shaun. John Mateer going against Illinois State. Okay, I'm not curious about the game, but I'd like to see what that offense is going to look like with him. Can the offensive line block anybody? You know, Virginia, you're like, dude, Virginia was a quarterback away from having a decent team the last couple of years. Well, they lost some of their top players, but they got a pretty good quarterback now in Chandler Morris, you know, who's another coach's kid. You talked about Ty Simpson. There's just so many of these like new quarterbacks and new faces, some of them young, some of them are transfers, that we're going to get our first chance to see this weekend. Bear Bachmeier, true freshman, is going to make his first start, you know, in his first game against Portland State this weekend. There's so many interesting quarterback storylines, Shaun. That's one of the things I'm most – Devin Dampier at Utah, Nico at UCLA. There's the Lenore Sellers versus Kyron Drones battle on Sunday night. I cannot wait to watch quarterbacks this weekend. And Gio Lopez at North Carolina on Monday night going against Josh Hoover. What's that going to look like? There's so many great quarterback storylines this weekend, Shaun, where it's not so much – we're going to have answers, but it's our first chance to see these guys in action, and that's what I'm excited about. And of course, Notre Dame's part of that as well with CJ Carr.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you a question here. Give me your top 3 Notre Dame players you're excited to see.
Like that are still on the team or guys that transferred somewhere else?
No, that are playing Sunday. Like, who are you excited to see the most on the roster play Sunday?
CJ Carr.
Obviously, CJ Carr.
Right. I mean, he's at the top of my list. I want to see what he looks like. I want to see if Boubacar is going to be able to carry over what I've heard about him in fall camp into the season. I'm very curious to see what Malachi Fields looks like for Notre Dame. So I'll take CJ out of the equation. That's the given for both of us. I want to see what Malachi Fields looks like. That's another one I'm excited about. And I could go through this linebacker, this D tackle, but honestly, is Anthony Knapp making a jump in pass pro? If Anthony Knapp can go into this game against Misador and Ruben Bain and hold his own in pass pro, I'm going to look at this season and be like, okay, that's my final question along with quarterback. That's my last question. I know he's going to be able to block in the run game. I don't care. He could go out there and dominate the run game and then struggle in pass pro. I'm going to be concerned because I know he can run block. He did that last year. But if he can hold his own against these defensive ends who are 275, 285, I mean, I'm going to look at the rest of the schedule and be like, I think he's good. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's good. We're you know, he's, I mean, you could talk about Gerby and all, I mean, like, that's such an important part of this game, and it's such an important matchup, but it also has long-term, what does it mean? Whereas if he struggles in this game, you look at the rest of the schedule and say, I don't know that he's going to face this kind of talent again. It's going to make me real nervous when he has to go against Texas in the playoffs to go against Colin Simmons. Or if they get Ohio State in the playoffs and he's got to go against Kenyatta Jackson if he struggles in this game in pass pro.
Yeah.
But if he plays well against these DNs, I'm going to be like, okay, here we go. Let's do it. Joe Rudolph was right. He can play left tackle. And now I'm feeling really good about this offense. Really good. That's mine.
I'm going to push CJ aside. That's the obvious for everybody, right? Jason Onyé at the top for me. This dude has won the spring buzz for 3 straight springs.
Yes, dude. 3 years ago.
3 straight. I've never seen him.
Spring MVP.
3 spring MVP, 3 straight springs. Dude, it's go time. Be the dude. Be the dude that everybody thinks you are and you can be. He's number 1 for me. That's just me pushing CJ to the side. Number 2, I want to see Christian respond. I can't wait to see Christian Gray respond. I think he's going to respond. I think he's going to have a great year. I know you talk about how they feel about him in that building, the work he's put in. Look, we talked about the conversation that Benjamin Morrison's dad had with us. Like, dude, the only thing that's stopping Christian is his preparation. That's it. His preparation. When he meets the preparation up with the talent, you're going to see him take off. Right? I'm telling you, man. Malachi Fields, bro. I was watching that someone posted on social media. It was the 14 Florida State game, and it was a pass to Corey Robinson in the corner end zone. And this dude, DB had no shot. Air threw the ball as about as high as you could throw it. And Corey just went up and got it. And I'm like, Notre Dame hasn't had that in a long time at wide receiver. It's been a long time.
Even Miles wasn't that kind of guy all the time.
No. And when you see the clip, I think from the last scrimmage in the stadium, and they show that CJ throw to Malachi Fields where he just goes up and snatches it. I was told,
Sean, that wasn't even his best catch and throw from CJ in the game. I was told he beat Leonard for a bomb also, and they didn't put it on the highlight from CJ.
That right there, those are thrhree people outside of CJ. I can't wait to watch.
So Malachi, we both had. Man, we could have talked all day about other guys, but yeah, those are ones that I think are going to be impactful. I'll give a couple guys, a couple former Notre Dame players that I'm very much looking forward to seeing this weekend. We talked obviously about Steve Angeli at Syracuse. I'm really hoping that Tobias Merriweather can be healthy at Utah. He's had another great fall camp. He had a great fall camp at Cal last year. I was talking to some people out at Cal, and they were like, he's going to be their top wide receiver, and then he gets hurt in fall camp, and you just feel bad for him. He's a great kid, and you want to see him have some success. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. We obviously talked about Steve Angeli, but we watched Rocco last night. I thought Rocco was physical. Rocco looked to be in a little better shape, like a little bit less around the midsection. He looked really in good shape last night. I thought he did pretty well, against a very good in Cincinnati interior. Dante Corleone's a really good football player and a big football player. So, I obviously got a chance to see Rocco last night, but and look, just because I think he's such a great kid, and I didn't pay attention to if he played much or anything last night. I was watching the game, but I was getting so much work done. But just Jaden Mickey, I really hope that Jaden's able to find some success this season. Because I don't know if he played much last night. I don't know if I just wasn't paying attention to specific players. I watched the game and I had some feelings about that game last night, but I didn't get a chance to see specifically if Jaden played much. I'm actually looking at their the thing from Pro Football Focus. Now, he played one snap last night, so it doesn't look like he played a whole lot. But I'd like to see him finally have some success and do well. But speaking of Boise State, Sean, that was a weird game. They were in control of that game early. They're about to make a stop on South Florida, and they get that just bad personal foul. They never recovered from that. And then the fake punt, that team had no energy. They had no fight. They looked slow. That was a rough game, Sean, beyond just the loss. It's the way they lost,
When you get hit in the mouth as a culture, as a program, do you have that do you have that reserve that you can always go to? Who are you as a program? Yeah. I love the coach.
And we now know what it was for Boise.
It was a player.
Yeah.
More than it was the program and the culture.
Right.
And that is what came. That's what I saw last night.
It was a wake-up call for Spencer Danielson last night. It's yes. Our culture was Ashton Genty because when we couldn't go to him, nobody stepped up and said, I got this on either side of the ball. And that was very problematic for them. So anyway, we did have a super chat from my guy, Christopher Galloway, a.k.a. Black Irish 864. Chris is a member of the IB board. Loving that IB hat. Good afternoon from Miami. Glad to be back. Had to unplug for a while. Go Irish. Christopher, your absence has been felt and missed, my man. I appreciate you. Enjoy the game. Shaun, that's going to do it for the show today, everybody. Do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. Make sure you're signed up for the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Make sure you've also subscribed to the CFB Nation channel. Make sure you subscribe to Lucky Lefty. And Shaun, next time you and I will be seen together in a setting like this will be Sunday night after the game. So we look forward to seeing you. Win or lose, baby, we're always going to be here talking about what we saw. Can't wait for it. That's Shaun. I'm Bryan. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all again here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.